Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on social media at MMA LOT, and joined as always by my guy Cody Saftik. You guys can follow him at CJ Saftik on Twitter, and we are here propping you up for UFC 282, headlined by a vacant light heavyweight title fight. The last time it was vacant as well, Jan Blachowicz was in the fight. He finds himself there once again, this time going up against Magomed Ankalaev. But Cody, you wouldn't know that if you're looking at the UFC's social media and what their publicity blitz has been like over the last couple of days, because all eyes are on the co-main event with Paddy the Baddy Pimblett taking on his stiffest test to date and Jared Flash Gordon. What is your hype level for this UFC card? Are you psyched for it? What are you thinking here?
Well, it was supposed to be a really stacked up card, and unfortunately, take it from me, I matchmake fights. Things hit the fucking fan fast, bro. So yeah, unfortunately, it's been deteriorated. There's still 13 fights altogether. The only one that I'm really looking forward to would be Ilya Topuria versus Bryce Mitchell. I think that's a fan's fight for sure. So yeah, the interest level not huge, especially for a pay-per-view. If this was a regular run-of-the-mill fight night card, I think you get excited for it. 13 spots, but between Bellator on the Friday, there's an LFA. There's the UFC card. There's Aries FC if you want to bet on it. There's a zillion other things going on. It's like maybe this one's slowly falling under the radar. But I'll tell you something right. Last week on fire, like I had a goddamn crystal ball. Everything I said about James Krause came true, and the picks weren't so good. So this week, let's talk about James Krause. More accurate picks, hopefully.
Yes, sir. It came to a crazy whirlwind last week, but yes, we do have two UFC events to close out the year. Bellator this week, and like you talked about as well, LFA, CFFC next week, and Fury FC the week after that. Cage Warriors to close out the year, as well as Risen versus Bellator as well. So a ton of MMA to close out this 2022 calendar. But first, let's talk about the big UFC pay-per-view this weekend. Before we get into it, though, shout out to the All-Star as well. Make sure you guys drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out their All-Star app as well. That is the best place for you guys to get your up-to-date MMA news, the James Krause stuff, all on there. I promise you guys will be fully caught up if you had that app downloaded. Link is in the description below. Drop some love for the guys over there and check out the app. All right, Cody, we got about, I think, 13 fights to get through here. We're not going to waste too much more time, so let's just get into this bad boy. First fight of the night takes place in the bantamweight division. We got Cameron Simon, recent Contender Series signee, taking on short notice replacement Steven Coslow. In terms of odds, you'd expect heavy chalk on the obviously fighter that was preparing for this date this entire time. Minus 380 on Cameron Simon and plus 310 the return on Steven Coslow. Now, it's interesting because the last time Cameron Simon fought was in the Contender Series, and he was in a similar situation to Steven Coslow in the fact that there wasn't much tape available on him, right? Unless you shelled out the couple bucks that are required to get an EFC subscription and see some of his fights over there. A lot of people were just blindly fading him because they had more footage on Josh Wayne Kim and thought he was the better fighter, he was an older fighter, and that he would be able to beat the youngster who was 21 years old at the time. He's still 21. He's actually going to be turning 22 10 days after this fight. But Cameron Simon goes out there as the plus 200 underdog, pulls off the upset, even finishes Josh Wayne Kim in the latter parts of that fight. Now, on the Steven Coslow side, relatively unknown to a lot of fighters, right? Or a lot of people. There's only about 3 fights available online, 2 of them being amateur fights. The other fight was a pretty quick finish as well. But from what I remember, that footage was available a couple weeks ago until this guy signed on the dotted line to get into the UFC. Maybe a little bit of gamesmanship going on there, not showing his hand to Cameron Simon. But all it takes is a quick look at his topology to see what this guy does. He wants to get you to the ground. He wants to try to strangle you. And he wants to do it as quickly as possible. And if it wasn't the record that shows it off, it's probably the affiliation that you see on his topology page with 10th Planet Jacksonville. This guy wants to grapple, wants to take it to the ground. He wants to try to strangle you. Now, there are some question marks about Cameron Simon's grappling game, right? You see Joshua and Kim get him down ever so slightly, right? It didn't even It didn't even take that long. I think it was like 10 seconds after that Cameron Simon was able to get back to his feet. But the one footage or one fight that's online that people can watch, at least highlights of it, was that 5-round fight that he had against an 8-7 opponent who had takedown success against him. And it took Cameron a little bit more time to eventually work back to his feet so he can get back to his handiwork, which is his advantage, his striking, which will likely be his advantage in this matchup as well. But the unknown on Steven Coslow makes this fight unbettable for me in terms of the favorite. I don't like taking chalk on a guy against another guy that I don't know much about. But the little bit that we know about Coslow makes him seem dangerous. Like, this guy could be a problem. You know, he's 25, 26 years old. And he's getting all these finishes inside the first round with his grappling. And that's the one aspect of Simon's game that we've seen him have some trouble with. So I don't mind a little bit of a stab on the Coslow side at that big plus money that he's currently giving us. Maybe even his submission line, which I think is currently around that. Wow, it's up to plus 700 now, which I think is a little bit worth a little bit of love. But in short, I'd probably just go with the fight doesn't go to decision. I think Simon will likely have a good enough striking advantage here that he could probably put Coslow away, especially considering that Coslow is on short notice, maybe not fully prepared for this. Probably goes balls to the wall early in this matchup to capitalize on his big win condition, which is that early finish on the ground. So fight doesn't go to decision, a little bit chalky, minus 250, Simon by KO or Coslow by sub. That's probably the best way you can extract value from this matchup. Prediction will be Simon by KO, but it worked out for me with Simon on the Contender Series. Maybe it works out for me this time around, taking a quarter unit shot or even a half unit shot on Coslow at that plus 310 line. But Simon by knockout is what I'm going to lean with as my prediction. What are you thinking here? Do you know something about this kid that I don't?
Yeah, nothing really. I'm going with Simon by KO as well. The only thing I could really say about Steven Coslow is, yeah, I mean, he grapples on the local Florida scene. He generally fights on the Florida regional scene. And listen, all these opponents are not exactly good. If you look at his last 3 fights, James Dunn, 5-5, Marcello William, 1-2, Anthony Rekic, 5-7. These are all bad guys, right, who he's able to submit in the first round. So what have you really gained about this guy? You mentioned the fact that maybe he's able to take down Saman, and Saman's had some trouble in the regional scene, maybe with his defensive wrestling. Like, I don't think that Coslow can really wrestle all that well. I just think he's one of these guys that has jiu-jitsu. When he's fighting lesser opponents, he's going to fall on top of them. He's going to take their bag. He's going to choke them out. Everything's in the first round. He has 0 wins by TKO, and he's not falling outside of the first round. These are all big red flags to me, right? Can he fight a second round? Can he fight a third round? Maybe. But taking a fight on short notice, he's going to go after his one winning condition, which is the first round submission. In terms of him getting the fight to the ground, Saman looks strong, man. On the Contender Series, I made the mistake of fading him, not just because I didn't know who he was, just because, like, Wang Kim's actually pretty good, man. He was like 17-1 as an amateur. His brother is an MMA fighter as well. You know, they had a decent career in the works, and he got smoked. Like, this kid had good cardio, and Wang Kim just dies in there against Saman, trying to match the pace, takes a beating, takes him down for 10 seconds. Saman's back up. He looks strong. He looked physical. I think taking him down is going to be a problem. Holding him down is going to be a problem. Now, Steve Coslow, a friend of mine, Mike Imperato, actually was booked to fight him. Now, to me, what's interesting about that is I've seen Mike Imperato turn down 100 opponents. I've seen him turn down guys that were 8-10, guys that were 12-15, guys with losing records. He'll be like, this guy fought at 45 one time, man. He might be big. Oh, man, this guy hasn't fought in 2 years. He might have got better. Like, he doesn't take anything. And he was like, yeah, no, I know Steven Coslow. I've trained with him down in Florida. He's not very good. I'm going to smoke him. He ends up getting like a knee to the head, like a week out of the fight, split his head. He pulls out of the fight due to a cut. But I always thought that was super interesting, that this guy that basically watches all the tape on all the guys and won't accept a fight was like in on Coslow. Like, this is the fight, man. So I think he's a very one-dimensional grappler, has that one winning condition, but getting the fights to the ground is going to be a problem. Of course, when you're 6-0 and not really on the UFC's radar, a short notice opportunity to jump in there last minute presents itself, you're going to take it, and you're going to give it the best go you got. But that all screams under 1.5, under 2.5. Fight don't go the distance. I'm taking Saman by KO.
Oh, so we did the unmute thing there. But yeah, no, there are a lot of question marks and unknowns about this fight. I think we'll get those questions answered within the opening minutes of this fight, and we'll truly see what kind of prospect Simon is going to end up being, and if Coslow has anything to say in terms of having a lengthy UFC career or not. All right, let's go to the next matchup here. It takes place weight class below in the flyweight division. We got Daniel De Silva going up against Vinicius Salvador, another recent Contender Series signee. We got minus 250 on Salvador and plus 210 the return on Daniel De Silva. Now, Cody, I've had tremendous success betting on the violence in Daniel De Silva fights, right? Like it's easy. They kept giving me under 2.5 at plus money. I kept taking it. And even the last time around, under 2.5 against Victor Morono, I think it was around minus 130. Still good enough for me. But now the bookmakers, the public are finally wise to it as the under 1.5 now. We get 7.5 minutes, not 12.5 minutes, which you usually get with flyweights at minus 200. Which is, we don't usually see that, especially for such a lighter weight class. But that's just Daniel De Silva's style. The guy goes out there and he tries to kill you in that first round. And if he can't, within the first 3 to 4 minutes, you see the guy huffing and puffing and guys are able to get him out of there. Vinicius Salvador, on the other hand, when I was watching his regional tape before his Contender Series fight, of course, I don't understand Portuguese, but the one thing I kept understanding was Anderson Silva. And you see it kind of in his game, right? Like even in the Contender Series fight, you see him backing up against the cage and urging his opponent to come on and try to, strike with him up against the cage. But obviously Shannon Ross wanted nothing to do with that because he kept getting tagged from the beginning of that fight. Salvador was a plus 200 underdog in that matchup and ended up pulling off a spectacular knockout victory and ends up getting signed to the UFC. The guy looks fun. He looks promising, right? Very good striker. But Daniel De Silva is still going to be dangerous in the opening minutes of this fight. Don't get that twisted, right? Salvador has some issues. He can get potentially caught by the explosive and speed or explosivity and the speed of Daniel De Silva early. But I think we're going to get a slugfest. I think we're going to get a bit of a war that Daniel De Silva will slowly start to succumb to as this fight starts to go on. But I'm going to get a little bit cheeky here, Cody. I'm going to go Salvador round 2 at plus 550. I just need these guys to hit each other a couple of times. Maybe Daniel De Silva tries to go out there and grapple and prolong his gas tank a little bit. And we get this into the second round. And then once he starts getting touched up by Salvador even more in that second round, that's where I think he starts to fall. That's where I think he ends up getting finished. And unfortunately, that will be the last time we get to cash on any sort of violence on Daniel De Silva, as he'll probably get a pink slip, considering that will be his 4th loss in a row in the UFC. So I like Salvador here. Salvador, I think, inside the distance is minus 190. Again, another crazy line for a specific prop for a flyweight. But just given how Daniel De Silva fights, you got to believe that ends up cashing. But I'm going to try to be sneaky here and take that round 2 prop on Salvador at plus 550. What about yourself?
Yeah, if you shop it around, that Vinicius Salvador inside the distance can be had at minus 165. You can also just take the TKO prop at minus 150. And I'm going to agree with a lot of the points you're saying. The thing with a lot of these Brazilian fighters, and Vinicius Salvador is a prime example, is they're coming into the Contender Series. So you're like, okay, I'm going to do my tape. And you watch your tape, and a lot of it's old. And a lot of it's, it's not really a great indication of who they are. They might get clipped, and you might think they're chinny, and then they show up in Las Vegas and they're like twice as thick, twice as mature, not the same person you watch tape on. Vinicius is exactly that. This guy on paper is a Hellcat. You know what I mean? He's going to come at you. He's going to put some pressure on you. But seeing him in the Contender Series, man, he is filling out that frame. He's long. He touches the opponent. He's got great volume. Ross took just a mountain of damage, and then eventually he puts him away. Looking at him overall, 14 pro wins, 13 of them by knockout, 1 of them by submission. He rocks a 100% finish ratio. And again, he has 2 knockout losses, but over the last 6 years spread out, I feel like his durability is really not that bad. If you're going to get into an exchange with him, he's got a good chance of putting you down. But beyond that, I like that he's able to carry that pressure. A lot of the times when you're finishing guys in the first round, they're first round finishes, right? When you look at him on the regional scene, it's like a lot of first round finishes, right? The ones that don't happen in the first, in the second. Nobody's made it to that third round. Now, I don't know if you could go ahead and say, well, Vinicius maybe doesn't have third round gas tank, or is it that no one's able to take that kind of pressure? Now, Lacerda, you mentioned it with him. The guy's the king of the under 1.5. 3 UFC fights. He's been finished all 3 times, once in a second round knee bar, twice by first round knockout. Sorry, Molina knocked him out 47 seconds into the second. He got knee barred in the first. He got knocked out in the first. It's, the UFC doesn't usually give guys the opportunity to fight out their 4-fight deal when they've lost the first 3 fights on said contract, all inside the distance in pretty spectacular fashion. But yeah, Lacerda's an entertainer. He's going to come out. He's going to throw caution to the wind. And you made mention it yourself. The guy's not above winning. He can land something. He's got a nasty spinning hook kick. He's got big power in his hands. One of the faster fighters that I've seen, right? So no doubt that he could, in theory, get to the target and land something. And then even that last fight with Victor Altamirano, it's one thing to say, oh, damn, Victor Altamirano knocked him out. Bro, he had Altamirano hurt early.
Yeah.
Problem is with this guy, it's all early. It has to be early. If it's not early, the wheels fall off. Yes, they do. So I think Salvador is going to take him into those deep waters and put him away. Everything you're saying all makes sense. The under 1.5, the under 2.5. Fight doesn't go the distance, chasing that specific TKO or inside the distance prop. And I'm doing exactly that myself. So I'm going to take Vinicius Salvador. Again, on my lines anyways, the minus 165 inside the distance or the minus 150 by TKO. Well, it seems like you should just pay the extra 15 points and go for that inside the distance in case something happens. Dude got knee barred by Figgy's brother. Like anything can happen with Lacerda. That being said, as I mentioned, 14 wins, 13 of them by knockout, 1 submission. That 1 submission was 10 years ago. Drum roll, please. It was by knee bar. So who knows, man? But I think I would chase that TKO prop, just get a little bit greedy with it.
There you guys go. Some violence. And actually, for the first 2 fights, I mean, I hope it comes through. Should be a great way to kick off this pay-per-view card. All right, let's get to this next fight here, which takes place in the featherweight division. We got Eric Silva, another Contender Series alum, going up against TJ Downtown Brown. I don't know if it's Downtown TJ Brown, whatever the hell it is. I think it's a stupid nickname anyway. But we got a pick'em line here, minus 110 on both sides. TJ Brown actually opened up as the underdog here, and a bunch of money came in on him to make this fight a pick'em line. Now, Eric Silva is one of those guys that got a late start in MMA. He is 35 right now. Had his first professional MMA fight when he was 29 years old, but it's pretty much fared well for him. He's 9-1. All of his wins coming via finish. I believe his last 6 actually have come inside the first round, and he makes no bones about what he wants to do. He wants to get you to the ground, and he wants to pummel your face into the mat or eventually look for a submission and get you out of there. Luckily for him on the Contender Series, he was going up against a guy that was much smaller than him, right? Anvar Boynes, I'm going to butcher his name, but either way, that guy should be fighting at bantamweight. I'm not sure why he even accepted that fight to begin with. Nasty striker. Showcased some great things on the regional scene before the Contender Series fight, but he had no answer for the size and pressure and grappling of Eric Silva. Eric Silva quickly gets him to the mat, gets into that dominant position, rains down elbows, and gets him out of there really quickly. We know what he wants to do, but we don't know anything outside of that. Look, we have no idea what he's going to look like if he can't get TJ Brown out of there early. Because TJ Brown, I guarantee you, will put up more of a fight than the last several opponents that Eric Silva has gone up against. So I'm still a little bit questionable on the side that I would take, because I'm not a guy that's really out there trusting TJ Brown, even at a pick'em line, because he can shit the bed as he did in his last fight against Shaila Nurdenbeka. And then there is just the unknown about Eric Silva, about how he looks should this fight get past that 6 or 7 minute mark. But the spot that I had my eye on, which I haven't pulled the trigger on yet, but I'm eyeing because I expect this to be a grapple-heavy fight, which will likely eat minutes away from the clock, is the over 1.5. That is the widely available total here, and it's currently sitting around minus 170 is the best line that I currently see. This could be one of those slow, drawn-out fights that TJ Brown has had over his last couple fights, right? He's going to make it harder for Eric Silva to get him out of there. And we talk about this every single goddamn week, Cody. Whenever a guy comes into the UFC, a guy that has notoriously been finishing guys on the regional scene, it gets harder and harder for them to do that once they get to the UFC. And TJ Brown is a tough out. He's going to be hard to put away for Eric Silva. I lean the TJ Brown side here. I think he grinds this one out. I think we do see some cardio issues from the Eric Silva side. That's more so just hypothetical. I'm just, assuming that's what we're going to get here. But knowing that TJ Brown has gone up against a stiffer competition, knowing that TJ Brown has gone a hard 15 minutes and come out with his hand raised, I would lean him here. TJ Brown by decision. Let me just get the exact prop odds on that. Brown by decision plus 300. But again, gun to my head, I like the over 1.5 most at minus 170. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, this one's tricky. Definitely tricky because you don't know really what you're going to get out of either guy. I would think that the biggest issue for me with TJ Brown is like every fight you're getting a different TJ Brown. It's honestly quite frustrating. When you look at, let's say, honestly very frustrating. When you see him on the Contender Series against Dylan Lockhart, it's like 5 takedowns land. It's like, damn, this kid can wrestle, right? You see him in his debut against Jordan Griffin, 7 for 7 on takedowns. 6 of them came in the first 3 minutes. It's like, damn, this guy can wrestle. Me likey. Him versus Danny Chavez, never shoots a single takedown, gets his leg blown off, gets taken down 4 times. Maybe I overestimated him. Him Him versus Kai Kamaka, got the wrestling going, gets the win. Him versus Charles Rosa, 6 takedowns, gets the takedown going. Him versus Shailin Nurmbayake, taken down 3 times, controlled, dropped. Can he wrestle? Can he not wrestle? Does he have cardio? Does he gas himself out? Does he have high ring IQ? Does he stick himself into 9 guillotine chokes against Jordan Griffin and show low ring IQ? Like, I can't trust it to get a good read on him every time. I would say experience-wise, he's got way more experience than Eric Silva, right? Could he get him into the second round and take advantage? Absolutely. We know Danny Brown's cardio, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but at least he got a good read on it. Eric Silva, his last 6 or 7 fights have ended in the first round. One has to assume if this thing gets stretched out a little bit, maybe Brown's going to be able to work his way back into it. Again, it's a 50-50 fight. Its line is a 50-50 fight. I completely agree with that. Looking at Eric Silva, he looks like Liver King if Liver King had never done any steroids. And then also, if you look at his nickname, it is the King. So just basically take the liver out of it, and you got him ready to go. Slow start, late start, as you said, to MMA. But a guy that really does take advantage of suspect competition, his ability to overpower guys in the first 5 minutes. And against TJ Brown, I don't know that he overpowers him in the 5 minutes. So it's really going to come down to cardio. If Eric Silva's got cardio to maybe carry it for 2 rounds, I think he probably does beat TJ Brown. If TJ Brown can just survive that early exchange, take him down, turn the tides, then maybe TJ Brown's live for it. The other element, not that this matters whatsoever, but like TJ Brown was at Glory MMA and Fitness. Like, he left Arkansas where he was with Bryce Mitchell, moved over there. Obviously, he's not there now. Bryce is on this card. I just don't know where he's at. Can't get a good read on him, I suppose. So yesterday on Dogger Pass, I'm kind of feeling like, well, it's a Dogger Pass, and I'm leaning towards Eric Silva, but there is no dog in this spot. It's a straight-up even money fight. It looks like money's starting to come on TJ Brown, which makes me want to take Eric Silva, but I understand the line movement on Brown. He's way more experienced. He's fought at this level. He's been into some deeper waters, and of course, his list of opponents is a lot more impressive. But to me, his chin's not great. His cardio is not great. His wrestling's hit and miss. He's going to have some problems potentially. So maybe chalk it up to a pass, but because I have to make a pick, I am going to go with Eric Silva ever so slightly. And I'm thinking I don't know. There's another thing. Do you go with the inside the distance, or do you think the TKO prop, the decision prop? Like, I'm feeling the decision prop, but the guy ends everything in the first round. So, like, I don't want him huffing and puffing, looking for his corner after 7 minutes, whereas TJ Brown might be in decent shape. So, not enough for me to change the pick. I will keep with Eric Silva. But again, 13 fights, Bellator, LFA, so much stuff going on. Maybe this is one you don't want a ton of investment in.
Yeah, big question marks here. Like, legit, the first tough opponent that we're going to see Eric Silva go up against, at least size-wise as well. Anvar, solid fighter in his own right, but just completely outmatched in terms of size. Let's see how he fares against a veteran like TJ Brown first before we start riding that Eric Silva train. All right, let's get to this next matchup here. Sticking in the featherweight division, we got everybody's favorite fighter, or at least most people's favorite fighter, Billy Quarantillo enters the cage here. He's going to be going up against Alexander Hernandez, who's going to be going down to 145 pounds for the first time in 9 years. It's been a long time since the boy has tried to make 145 pounds. I think he was a boy at that point, 21 years old. It's been that long that he's been in there. But I do like the what I'm feeling here is the violent spot, man. Billy Quarantillo, he is the master at just drowning guys, really putting the pace on them, but sticking that jab out there, putting the 1-2 together, and really just staying in his opponent's face. He did it against Shane Burgos, but Shane Burgos probably the technically better fighter there, which is why he was able to land better strikes and ultimately get his hand raised by decision. But like, I've always thought that anybody who could handle the pressure that Billy Q brings to the table and is technically better than Billy Q will likely be able to get their hand raised. That's why I was able to cash that underdog ticket on Gavin Tucker a couple fights back for against Billy Q. But we've seen the Benito Lopez out there have issues in terms of dealing with that pressure and trying to come back, and ultimately he falls and loses in the third round against Billy Q. Alexander Hernandez, athletically speaking, probably better than Billy Q, right? Don't get me wrong. In the early going, he's probably going to have a liver chance of winning this fight. But as this fight gets dragged on, and as Billy Q keeps putting his foot on the gas and staying in Alexander Hernandez's face, we've seen Hernandez break before. We've seen him stumble as fights go on, especially when he's dealing with resistance. And that's what he's going to be dealing with here against a guy like Billy Q, who, again, just stays in your face and just makes you very uncomfortable. So I understand why he's the favorite here. especially adding in the fact that Hernandez is going to try to chop off a leg to make 145 pounds tomorrow morning. That doesn't bode well against a pressure fighter like Billy Q. So even if you don't like the Billy Q side, I think you can go with the fight doesn't go to decision, which is still at a good enough line where that covers a possible Hernandez early finish, which is going to be tough to do against a durable opponent like Billy Q. But it also covers the aspect of, which I think is going to happen, Billy Q winning this fight down the stretch. Fight doesn't go to decision, currently sits around minus 120. Quarantillo inside the distance, plus 155. I'm seeing plus 165, even up to plus 190 on certain spots. But even Billy Q round 3, anywhere between plus 1,000 to plus 1,300. Sign me up. That's what Billy Q is known for. He's going to drag you through the mud and then finish you late. That's what I think he ends up doing here as well. So give me Billy Q inside the distance as my favorite bet. But let's sprinkle that round 3 prop as well. And hopefully we can hit that 4-digit plus number once again. Cody, what are you thinking here?
Yeah, it's not always as easy as like, man, one guy's got great cardio and comes up hot down the stretch, and one guy's got bad cardio and comes up flat down the stretch. But man, I see this fight going down the exact same way. You mentioned shopping around the price on Billy Q. I would say do that because, you know, there's book out there that rhymes with Ovada. You can get a plus 200 on a Billy Q by inside the distance. So Billy's one of these guys. He doesn't really jump off the top of your head as like potent finisher, man, big power, big finishing ability, big submissions. But yeah, no, like 80% of his career wins are inside the distance, and he's someone that's always pushing the pace, and that's what I love about him. When you look at basically all of his fights that he's had, there's just that ability to break down guys. This goes back to that fight with Kamala Kirk on the Contender Series, where he comes in as like a sizable underdog to Kamala Kirk, right? But he puts an absolute thrashing on him, finishes him in the 3rd round, 22 seconds into the 3rd round. The Jacob Kilburn fight in the UFC, smashes Kilburn for 2 rounds, finishes him at the end of the 2nd. Spike Carlisle, it didn't finish him, but that 3rd round, it was all Billy Q, baby. Give me 2 more minutes. He's on it. Kyle Nelson finishes him in the 3rd round. Gabriel Benitez finishes him in the 3rd round. It's very much Billy's still going at that point, but it's mostly his opponents can't keep that pace up with him. So the first rounds are always going to be competitive. And in fact, I would say Hernandez is going to be very competitive in this first round. So if you're looking at the live betting market, great opportunity to maybe let Billy lose the first round and then try to get some plus money going into the second, because that's when the tide should turn. So we know with Billy, he's going to continuously bring that pressure. He's always going to be in your face. And then, of course, you know, it doesn't take a genius to figure this one out with Alexander Hernandez. When he loses, he never gets knocked out in the first round. He's always getting finished pretty much in the second round. Cerrone, Drew Dober, Renato Moicano his last time out. It's very much that first round. He's strong. He's athletic. He moves well. He throws big power. He can wrestle to a certain degree. Second round, he starts to tire. Not only that, if it's one of these moments where a little bit of adversity happens, he gets hit, he's in a bad spot, he generally folds up. He doesn't have an ability to persevere and get through it. And it's been well documented. This guy's like a mental midget. You know, he at first it was all about, you know, be the biggest asshole I can be, because that's where the confidence was coming. He didn't believe in himself. So he's talking himself into these spots. And Donald Cerrone gave him a humbling beating. But since then, it's much of the same thing. When he's confident and he can go out there and beat on a Mike Breeden, he looks good. When he's not confident and he's forced to overcome a bad situation, he generally doesn't. So I'm thinking this one's going to be much of the same. Billy will have to overcome some bad spots in the first round. Hernandez is going to be a problem. The longer it goes, I think Billy's just going to start putting hands on him. He's going to make him breathe. He's going to make him tired. He's going to make him work. And that's when the finish is going to open up. The other thing with Hernandez, definitely wait to see the weigh-ins on Friday, because he's a big, thick guy at 55. I'm actually amazed that he's going to be trying to come down to 145 pounds. But that being said, you can see him on the scales at 55, drawn out in the face, not looking too good, kind of half guessing himself, makes the weight, goes on. At 145, I think it's like there's going to be such a bigger battle leading up to the fight that I think that's going to be in his head. And then if you do make the weight, now you got to perform, and now you start to tire, and now you're wondering, can I take a punch as good? Well, shit, man, you couldn't take a great punch to begin with. So if that's compromised, if your lackluster cardio is compromised, Billy's going to take advantage. Now, as I say all of that, is there not at least a 1% chance that Alexander Hernandez was always meant for featherweight? He's going to look awesome. He's going to look awesome. He's going to Beneil Dariush's ass in 50 seconds, right? Sure, it's possible. It's MMA. It's the game we play. But I would have to go with what's more logical and what's more likely to happen. And that's Bill doing what Billy does. And that's just put on that continuous pace and finish this thing inside the distance. So I did take the Billy Q inside the distance prop.
Usually when we see guys changing divisions, they're closer to the tail end of their career, right? Like they're in like mid 30s, late 30s, where they either drop a weight class or go up a weight class. But Hernandez is probably still in that like peak range of his age, right? He's 30 years old. Like maybe he has, like you're alluding to, maybe he has that success at 145 pounds. Maybe this is where he should have been the entire time. But we got to see him on the scale first. That's the thing. You said he filled out that frame so well at 155 pounds. How the hell is he going to get down to 145? We're just over 12 hours away from finding out how he's actually going to look on the scale. We'll see how it works out for him. All right, let's get to this next matchup here. It takes place in the middleweight division where we got your boy, Chris Curtis, trying to rebound off of his first ever UFC loss, going up against Joaquin Buckley. In terms of odds, we're currently looking at -165 on Buckley and +140 the return on Chris Curtis. Now, I was going back and forth about this matchup the entire time, and I knew I'd get some solid Chris Curtis takes from you, so I might as well cover the Joaquin Buckley side if I may here. Buckley very much reliant on a kick-heavy game at times, right? You see him very much just spamming the kicks to the body, using the outside movement and utilizing that like spin kick that he likes to use. He's been trying to replicate that Impa Kasanga knife finish, not like kick for kick essentially, but just trying to get another highlight reel knockout and try to grasp at that fame and that love that he had way back in the ending of 2020. But he hasn't been able to capture that again after getting knocked out by Alessio Di Chirico. Now he's just trying to go out there and get some dubs, right? He came up short against Nasruddin Imavov back in September in a I don't want to say a super close fight, but a fight that likely could have gone either way. But it was Imavov's lengthy striking and distance striking, and then ultimately his grappling, which got him the win that night. But this is a fight where it's very winnable for him if he doesn't exchange in the pocket with Chris Curtis, which is what Chris will likely want in this matchup. Chris is just a mean machine when it comes to throwing in the pocket and mixing it up with, throwing strikes to the body and bringing it up to the head once you start bringing that defense a little bit lower. He's such a veteran, right? He came into the UFC with 35, 36 professional fights under his belt, and it was about time that he finally got his crack at that big show. And he pulled off upset after upset and then eventually ran into Jack Hermanson, which was a fight he took on short notice. Let's not forget about that. So it's cut him some slack in that aspect. But now he has a full training camp here against a guy like Joaquin Buckley. It's a winnable fight for him. But I think if Buckley plays this safe and plays it smart, he's just going to spam kicks from the outside, not similar to what Hermanson did. Maybe he'll throw some punches and stuff after the kicks. But I think that this is his fight to win if he can go out there and stick to a legitimate game plan and not get sucked into a firefight, a slugfest in that pocket range where Chris Curtis actually thrives. So I lean with the Joaquin Buckley side here, not so much to actually bet him at -165, but this is one of those fights that I think that will likely go the distance where these guys respect each other a lot, but will land a lot of big shots too, but not the guy is going to go out in the spot. I do think the over 1.5 -160, not a bad spot in this fight. Fight goes to decision at +150. I don't think is a bad spot either, but I'm going to lean with the Joaquin Buckley side here and say he wins by decision, which currently sits at +300. One of the biggest what-if fights on the card for me, personally speaking, but that's kind of how I'm seeing this one play out. What about yourself? You backing your boy once again, or do you think that Buckley has a recipe to pull off the win here?
Yeah, I'm backing my boy once again here. I think this is a good winnable fight for him, especially, if they're going to give you plus money on Action Man, +400 Action Man by decision. It's like, yeah, okay, count me in as interested. But yeah, I do see this as being a dangerous fight. I don't see it playing out quite the same as you. Some major differences for myself personally is that I don't want to see him slug it in the pocket with Buckley. Curtis gets hit way too much, man. Sure, he's got one hell of a beard on him, got one hell of a chin under that beard too, but he takes way too much damage for my liking. If you look at his fight with Phil Hawes in his debut, he got shit kicked for 3 minutes until he clipped Hawes, but it's not exactly a viable game plan to just go up there, cover up, and try to rope-a-dope your way to a victory as you move up the ladder. His fight with Rodolfo Vieira. Rodolfo can't strike, right? He's a BJJ black belt. He's probably on the juice, even though he passes his USADA test, but he's hitting Chris clean across the chin. Clean. Chris can take it because Rodolfo's not sitting down on his punches, but Buckley, if he's got anything, he's got big power. He's got short arms, so standing with him in the pocket going to be an issue. You mentioned that you saw Buckley winning the striking exchanges by maybe staying outside and spamming kicks. Here's why I don't really see that as being the play for him. He's so low output. His career high in 8 UFC fights is 51 significant strikes landed. That 51 was against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and he is done by the end of it. He is lying on the mat, huffing and puffing for air, completely zapped out. Everything is low output. He went 10 full minutes with Duraev, landed 27. His fight with Imavov last time out, 46. His fight with Antonio Arroyo was into the third round. He had landed 41. He's just a low output guy. So the thing with Action Man is all of his fights, I mean, he's able to go up and put up big numbers. I mean, he'll force your hand. You got to fight back with him. And as Paul Shaughnessy mentioned yesterday, like Brandon Allen was landing a ton of shots on Chris Curtis as well. The thing is that if you try to go punch for punch with him and you do not knock him out, you're going to die trying. You'll tire yourself out. To me, that's what Buckley would do. He carries too much muscle. He's got a big chest on him. He's a big power guy, which as a result, he doesn't just spam kicks from the outside. He's generally trying to close the distance. He's generally trying to use some of that explosiveness, get a hold of his opponent. But I think Chris Curtis can just pick and plod and ploy and, use the jab and just use singular 1-2 strikes to just kind of pick his shots and, take over the volume game, right? So that's kind of how I see it going. Curtis should be in better shape than the Hermansson fight. He should have a better idea how to cut off a ring, hopefully. And people forget Hermansson, you got the action man versus the running man, right? Well, Joaquin Buckley's at least going to try to fight him. He's not just going to take off the whole time. He'll try to mix it up in there and get the damn thing done. The other thing of note to me is that they've actually been training partners. One of the big things with Albert Duraev going into the Joaquin Buckley fight is that they had spent time together at Extreme Couture, and that Duraev was like, I take this guy down all the time in the gym. Buckley was like, yo, man, we don't go 100% in the gym. I'm going to knock you out when we fight for real. And I thought that was the best Buckley look. He had like that inside info. With Curtis, I feel like Curtis would have sparred him. If you spar him, you see the setups to those big explosive strikes. And if he's got a read on him, he should just pick and ploy and plod and just slowly chip his way to get in the win. I wouldn't rule out a Curtis KO. He's got power. He's one of these guys that if he's going to knock you out, even though he's knocked out guys in the UFC in the first round, he'll usually knock you out down the stretch. I just got to feel like Buckley has shored up his cardio. He has shored up some durability issues, and he'll probably shoot a few takedowns to slow this thing down. So I'm going to go with Chris Curtis. I'm going to take that Curtis by decision, plus 400.
I'm glad we both at least see this fight going the distance, right? That's something that a lot of people might disagree on, but we'll see if it comes to fruition here. Now, two guys that are former, products of Extreme Couture are matching up in this next fight. We got a middleweight bout here between Edmen Shahbazyan, who now calls Extreme Couture home, and Dalcha Lungiambula, who used to be at Extreme Couture. I believe he's down there in Florida now with the Killcliff FC guys. But I don't think they trained together. I think they were kind of just passing by. Dalcha was on his way out as Edmen decided to shake things up and try to save his UFC career. That's what both of these guys are going to be doing, as they're both on losing streaks. Dalcha on a 3-fight losing streak, all actually his last two coming via finish. Although he was close to finishing Cody Brundage himself early in that first round, he ends up getting caught in a guillotine choke and is forced to tap out. And then last time around, obviously, one of the best celebrations all year by Punahele Soriano, getting that finish of Dalcha in the second round of their fight. And that causes Dalcha to be on a 3-fight losing streak. On the flip side, for Edmen Shahbazyan, how quickly times have changed, right? Going into the COVID era, everybody was so high on this kid, and then he gets that matchup against Derek Brunson, where he's a huge favorite. Tapology has him listed as a -400 favorite that night, but we saw that one flaw in his game come back and haunt him, which haunted him in the Darren Stewart fight a couple fights prior to the Derek Brunson fight. We saw him slow down in that matchup, and luckily for him, he had the grappling advantage against Darren Stewart that night. He was able to ground him in that third round and stay away from that big power. Couldn't do that against Derek Brunson when he wasn't able to get him out of there in the early going of that fight. He ended up getting grappled to the ground in the latter half of that fight and eventually finished before the third round even started, if I remember correctly. That is followed up by a loss to Jack Hermansson and Nasruddin Imavov, where we see the bright spots of Edmen Shahbazyan's game still. He's a very hard and difficult fighter to deal with in the early goings. His speed, his footwork, his combinations, and his power are why he got to where he did as quickly as he did. But it's the cardio that came back and haunted him time and time again. And I'm interested to see whether they've shored those issues up here now that he's training over there at Extreme Couture. However, I don't think we're going to find out this time around, because I think that his striking advantage that he'll have here over Dalcha Lungiambula is going to shine through, and that should allow him to get the finish early on in this fight. I think Dalcha, 35 years old, we slowly see him start to break down with his physicality, which is something he used to rely on a lot back in his UFC days and even earlier on in his UFC career. But now, 35 at 185 pounds, I just don't see that same Dalcha from back in the day. I think that this is a great bounce back spot for Edmen to get his feet wet, to get back into the win column and get another big first round finish, which I think is going to be on the menu this weekend. But the way that I look to approach it, rather than taking that minus 300 line, which is something I would not suggest for anybody to do from somebody that has as bad cardio issues as Edmund Shahbazyan does, was to just tie myself to the inside the distance line, which I personally got at minus 125 on Edmund Shahbazyan specifically. I see minus 110 on certain spots as well, and even plus 105 on a certain bookie. I think that would be the better way to play this matchup rather than taking his chalky line at minus 295. That's why I love doing this prop and UP show with you, Cody, because we turn those big chalk prices into better bettable lines where you don't have to parlay these guys and then end up having to rip up your ticket because you got stuck with a bad line. I'm going with Shahbazyan. I think he gets it done within the first round, but I'm going to play it safe and just take that inside the distance. I'd play it up to that minus 125, minus 130 range personally, but if you can get a better line than that, all praise to you. What are you looking at here, Cody? Am I too high on the Shahbazyan side, or does he get it done?
No, honestly, I think you got a really good assessment there. We all know that Shahbazyan is a tremendous talent. The kid's been training his entire life, from adolescence all the way to adulthood. He's got good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's got good boxing. He's got good fundamentals. He's a young, bright prospect. He'd finished so many guys in the first round. You mentioned the Darren Stewart fight, like awful, like tired. But that was the first time he'd ever been outside of a first round. So it's almost understandable that he was a little bit winded and fatigued. And then the UFC just decides, you know what, throw him into the deep end. Derek Brunson, Jack Hermanson, Nasruddin Imavov. These guys are top-level competitors, guys that are top 15, top 10. Too much too soon for a young kid like that. But I've seen this time and time again. You are the absolute best. You're a whiz. You're going to be the next big thing. You're from Canada. How many times have you heard the next George St. Pierre? A million times, right? Everybody's supposed to be.
Should I pull out the list?
Yeah, and you know what? I had a good conversation with Robin Black one time, and he's like, well, think about if you're a gym owner, right? And this kid walks in, and it's like, holy shit. This kid just moves like the wind. He's got excellent footwork. He's got excellent cardio. He's got excellent durability. He's got natural power in both hands. He wrestled in high school. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is sound. Oh, my God, we've got something on our hands. So Robin's like, how often does that happen? I was like, yeah, all the time. He goes, now think about it. There's a kid that is a very fucking special talent in Indiana. And there's another one in Michigan. And there's 2 more in California. And there's 3 more in Brazil. And there's a kid in Argentina. And there's 10 more in a Russian coal mine. You're not special. You're not. They're everywhere. So it's all about who's going to stay with it and who's going to break on through and who's going to continue to develop and kind of just like improve their career and keep going. And with Shahbazyan, I think he got to that level where under Edmond Taverdian and being at a Glendale fight team, it's like, I think he got to a point where it's like, you're going into the gym and you're the top guy. Who was pushing him? His brother was actually pushing him for the majority of his early career. And then at some point, his brother kind of stops competing and it's just the kid. He's the best guy in the gym. Ronda's not there anymore. Travis Brown's not there anymore. Jake Ellenberger's not there anymore. The gym doesn't have any fighters for you. So how could you possibly be getting that real live action feeling of going into those deep rounds, those gritty rounds, facing some adversity in the gym? No, he's the big dog in his gym. I bet you he has his way all the time. So what he does in that first round, he probably does all day in the gym. No one's going to push him. No one's going to test him. So him leaving on his own will and realizing this is a toxic environment. I need to get out of my comfort zone if I want to improve and go down to Extreme Couture where you're just a body, pal. There's a lot of people in the gym. There's a lot of talented people in the gym. And there's a lot of young kids in the gym. They want your spot. And they want to go home and tell their friends that they beat up Edmund Shahbazyan in the gym today. So you got to stay sharp. You got to stay on your feet. And that's just going to benefit him. He's faced the adversity. We know how talented he is. He's faced the adversity. He's made the conscious decision to improve and change. And if he can get 2 rounds, we should be good. Now, Dolce Longambulia, he doesn't have very good cardio. I mean, look how much muscle the guy's got on him. I was telling Paul yesterday, I'm like, the guy's got the trifecta of losses in his last 3. He loses a decision to Marc-Andre Barriault, where he completely gasses out. He gets submitted by Cody Brundridge in a fight he was otherwise dominating. And then he gets knocked out in his last time out. So there's multiple ways to beat him. And as I told Paul, I was like, just watch out for that big power. But Paul makes a good point. He's built like he's got huge power, but you don't necessarily see that power translate too much in the octagon. He's got 1 knockout win in the last 4 years, and it's over to Quan Townsend. So there's a chance that Shahbazyan can win the fight standing, using that jab, using the long-range weaponry, win the fight in the distance. Yeah, he's a judo black belt, his opponent is, but I feel like Shahbazyan could be able to trip him up, get him to the ground. If he does take him to the ground, then he's got a big grappling advantage. So multiple passive victory for Shahbazyan. The one question mark, same one you're asking, is the cardio any better? And all narrative, but I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes because he's done the right things to improve his cardio. Change camps, test yourself, you're in Las Vegas, might as well be in Las Vegas, might as well train with these guys and get acclimated for it. So I got Shahbazyan, same thing as you. And that inside the distance sitting at around -135, much better than this money line.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this is like a career resurgence for Edmund because the kid's fun to watch. He was a promising prospect before, just needs to retool a couple things, which I think he might have done in this training camp. Let's see if it comes to fruition on Saturday night. All right, let's get to this next matchup, which takes us up to the big boys, the heavyweights. We got Jairzinho Rozenstruik coming in as a -170 favorite. He's going up against Chris Daukaus, who's coming in at +145. Now, Chris Daukaus on a little bit of a rough run, but can you blame him? Get knocked out by Derek Lewis, and then he get knocked out by Curtis Blaydes. Now, I can see why people might have some question marks about, oh my God, this guy got knocked out by a wrestler. How could you even have any confidence in this guy? I'm not saying I'm picking Chris Daukaus, but we got to look into that Curtis Blaydes thing a little bit more, right? Curtis Blaydes benefits from the intimidation of the wrestling at this point, right? That's why he was piecing up Derek Lewis the way that he was in the first round until he forced a takedown and then got sent to Mars with that uppercut that Derek Lewis landed. That's the reason he was having as much success as he had against Chris Daukaus, because Daukaus was worried about that eventual level change that was going to come to get this fight to the ground where he thrives even more. But that just allowed Curtis Blaydes to let the hands go a little bit more. And that's why I think he ended up getting that knockout the way that he did, because Chris Daukaus was just worried way too much about that takedown coming his way. You know who he's not going to have to worry about takedowns coming his way with? Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who's going to look to try to take his head off this entire time. So it might be a little bit more live position for Chris Daukaus to get his hand raised this weekend. But I'm just not completely sold that he'll be able to handle that big power of Rozenstruik once he's able to land it. Rozenstruik, technically speaking, probably the better striker here. But like the big thing that people used to harp on about Chris Daukaus early in his UFC career was, oh man, look at this guy, how fast he is, look at his hand speed, look how he moves. But yeah, you're going to look like that against the Parker Porters of the world. You're going to look like that against the Rodrigo Nascimentos of the world. But like when you're fighting legitimate competition, and, you know, Rozenstruik, I've never really been that high on him, but he is a guy that's going to, you know, really throw and try to counter effectively and try to land that big punch on your chin and try to put you down. And that's where my concern here comes in terms of trying to trust Chris Daukaus in the spot. Based on some of the interviews and stuff he's done this week, he seems like a guy that's going to look to get this fight to the ground and try to utilize his BJJ black belt, which you wouldn't assume he has, considering how against grappling he seems to be whenever he fights. But I think that Rozenstruik will eventually catch him on one of those spots where Daukaus tries to cross the distance and tries to get his hands on him to drag him to the mat. And then from there, I think that we'll see Rozenstruik eventually knock him out. But at -170, I'm just not sold on taking a shot on Rozenstruik at that price tag. His knockout prop at -120, a little bit more enticing, but still, I don't like playing that type of, you know, that line for a guy in Rozenstruik who at times just doesn't give himself the maximum opportunity to actually land that knockout blow. Sometimes he is a little bit low output. Statistics might not show it at some points, but like you see him a little bit too patient at times. But when he does open up and when he does finally let it go, he can knock you out, right? The Augusto Sakai fight, the Junior Dos Santos fight, we can see him go out there and do that. Maybe he does that here against Chris Daukaus as well. So I'll lean with Rozenstruik by knockout. I don't want to get caught up in the under 1.5 here. If Daukaus is actually truly successful in getting this fight wrapped up and pushing him up against the cage and making this a grappling matchup and eating away at the clock, I don't want to get stuck with that chalk that's on the under 1.5. So the only prop that I would consider is Rozenstruik by KO, but even the price tag, I'm a little bit iffy about it myself. What about yourself, Cody?
Yeah, the price tag's not great just because I think everybody sees if he's going to win, he's going to win by knockout. And then at -115, you know, maybe it keeps you away from it. But yeah, I think it's got a great play of hitting. Now, I felt bad that I got to be the guy that says that because I was really hoping you'd be the guy to say it. But, well, you said it last week, just not with Chris Daukaus. I think it applies for him, though. But you look at Curtis Blaydes, Derek Lewis, and Zuya and Wahoo. I can't say because I'd be considered racist, but clearly Chris Daukaus does not deal good against big black guys. I was hoping you were going to say it. You get a free pass on shit like that. I do not. Daukaus is not actually heavyweight. Like, sure, he fights at heavyweight, but he clocks in at like 230 pounds. By his own account, even when he fights, it always comes up in the broadcast, this guy probably could make 205. Leading into this fight week, he's been adamant on the record. You know what? 205 is probably in my near future. It keeps running in my head. Not being that big of a guy, being able to cut, that's going to be a problem because it's not just you're chinny, but you're fighting at heavyweight in the world's premier mixed martial arts organization. All these guys are big. All these guys hit hard. And unfortunately, that's the problem with him, is that he's got combination boxing. When you look at him at his best, he's not one-punch KOing guys. It's that he's putting up volume. He's backing them up. He's causing them to work. And in Rozenstruik's case, terrible output, terrible volume. And in fact, for a guy that has that many highlight reel KOs, he get booed most of the time because he's not doing anything. But against Daukaus, it's going to work. It'll work fine. Daukaus is either going to force his hand and cause him to work, in which he'll get knocked out, or he's going to stay back and just allow him to pick his shots, in which he'll get knocked out. Looking at his brother, Kyle, his brother has the exact same issues as him, right? He's not all that durable. He's not strong and physical in the clinch. You tried to warn me about Eric Anders last week. You're like, Anders is going to be way too strong for him. But Anders is another one of these low volume, probably not going to knock you out guys. When you're that much stronger and you're having your way, you just start teeing off. When you start teeing off, you're going to hurt them. Kyle can't take a good shot. Chris doesn't seem to be able to take a great shot as well. 5 pro losses. 4 of them by knockout, 1 of them by submission. He's been finished in all 5 losses. Rozenstruik not going to submit him, don't get me wrong. But I feel like at some point he's going to touch him with that, that big power of his, and that's all it's going to take. So Rozenstruik by knockout. If you want to try to get greedy, you chase that 1, maybe that 2, all possible. But I would think just take that straight up, the knockout prop, and see when it happens. Rozenstruik, could knock you out in the first. You've seen it happen. Could knock you out in the 5th, like the Alistair Overeem fight. Like, there's no rhyme or reason with him. He doesn't actually go out there and, fight to the best of his abilities most of the time. He just takes so goddamn long to get going. But again, styles make fights, and I think that this one is going to end up working in his favor. So I got to go with Jairzinho Rozenstruik to get the job done and send Chris Daukaus down to 205 pounds in the future.
Yeah, we'll see if that's actually going to end up being in the UFC, considering you'll be on a 3-fight losing streak there. I'm trying to remember what the other fight was where, like, that narrative, the big black dude, like that narrative that came in. And I went back in Wikipedia and just checked right now. Iwan Cutelaba.
Yeah. And bro, what happened? I don't know what happened. Well, what I am saying is
3 straight losses.
Yeah, he had a good start to the fight, and then he got tired. We can move on from this one, but just the Daukaus Curtis Blades fight, because you had brought it up. It's like, well, Blades has that wrestling ability, and maybe Daukaus was thinking about the shot. Curtis Blades, for the first time in his UFC career, shot 0 takedowns, and then goes on the microphone afterwards and was like, "Y'all think I's a wrestler?" It was like, damn, dude, he fought to the worst of his skill set, and he still kicked the crap out of Chris Daukaus. So I'm going to have to say Jairzinho Rozenstruik probably just needs that 1. Is he going to wait too long? Yeah. Is he going to make it a sweat? Yeah. Is he one of these guys that you're about to rip up your inside the distance ticket, and with 20 seconds left in the fight, he bombs him with 1? Entirely possible. But I do think it happens at some point.
I love it. All right, let's get on to this next matchup, which I believe is the prelim headliner, possibly the youngest prelim headliner we've had in this spot as well. We got Raul Rosas Jr., the other phenom coming out of the Contender Series, not Bo Nickel, but we got Raul Rosas Jr. coming in as a minus 230 favorite. He goes up against Jay Perrin, who's likely fighting for his job here. He's coming in at plus 195. Now, it's so weird. Like, obviously, Rosas Jr., he was 17 at the time that he had his Contender Series fight, and that was likely his stiffest test to date, considering it took him the full 15 minutes to actually get his hand raised in that matchup against Mando Gutierrez. I don't know if this is a step up or step down for Mando, because I did pick Jay Perrin in his last fight against Richie Lang because I thought his grappling advantage would come through and he'd be able to keep Richie Lang on the mat. But Richie Lang kept getting up, kept stuffing takedowns, and kept putting on the damage on him, and he was able to get his hand raised. But like Raul Rosas, this kid looks good, man. I love his grappling exchanges. He's one of those guys that doesn't mind putting himself in bad positions because it's easier for him to get out of those bad positions, right? I saw as the Mando Gutierrez fight where, like, I think he gives up his back or something just so that he can spin out of it and end up on top of Mando Gutierrez. Like, it's truly a spectacle to watch this kid use his grappling and be as effective with it as he is. Not often do you see him in a bad position, but when he does, he's very calm, cool, and collected in those spots, and then eventually finds our reversal, eventually finds his way back to his feet, and eventually gets that takedown again and just does what he does best. And that's just grind on motherfuckers from on top, eventually until he finds that submission or that TKO finish. Jay Perrin, solid grappler in his own right. right? Like on the Cage Titan scene and the CES scene back in the day, he would use that to his advantage. He'd push these guys up against the cage. And it was probably the least fun I had tape studying a guy that was coming into the UFC because of how slow and drawn out his fights were. But that's how imposing he was against these guys. Does he have the striking advantage here against Raul? Maybe, but I don't think it's like a big discrepancy between the two in terms of the striking. He's not going to look like Israel Adesanya in the cage by any means against Raul, but I think this is going to eventually hit the mat, and I think the better pure jiu-jitsu player here is going to get their hand raised. And in my opinion, it's the youngster. It's the 18-year-old who can't even go out and celebrate in Las Vegas after he wins this fight. I think he ends up getting his hand raised here. I think he even submits Jay Perrin in the spot. Rosas Jr. by submission, currently sitting at plus 175. Personally, I wish we were getting a better line than that. Obviously, it's much better than his money line at minus 235. I don't feel too comfortable taking that spot considering the experience that Jay Perrin has already accrued. But this seems like one of those spots where, experience or not, that jiu-jitsu is just going to be too good for Jay Perrin to deal with. I'm going Rosas Jr. Rosas Jr. by sub. What about yourself? What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I can be talked into going Rosas Jr. I like his style of just continuously dog on a bone grappling and wrestling and staying on your opponent. But that being said, yeah, I don't know if I love him by inside the distance. He's still got a long ways to go. You mentioned like there's nothing he can do in Las Vegas. Yeah, can't drink, can't smoke, can't rent a car. I don't even think this motherfucker was able to vote until like 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago, maybe. Like
Bunny Ranch.
Yeah, he's super young. Now, I remember his episode of the Contender Series because it was like the hot fight of the week, right? Everybody else, all the other favorites won that week, I'm pretty sure. But it was like pretty, walk in the park type picks. And then there's Rosas. Do you take him? I mean, he's 17 and a half. As I told Paul yesterday, I'm like, you're young as shit when they start mentioning the halves. You know what I mean? 17 and a half. No, once you're like 20, no one's always like, oh, he's 22 and a half, 23 and a half. No. It's a little kid's game. That's how young he was. So I did take Mando on the basis of, what were you doing at 17 years old? What is anybody sitting here watching the stream doing right now? What were you doing at 17 years old? Right. You think back, it's like, oh, not fucking this, man. Nowhere near this. It would have been a big task. Now, Mando put him in a ton of bad spots. In fact, I thought Mando had chances that he could have won that fight, and yet he fought a terrible game plan. He routinely just engaged him in the grappling. He got tired. He fell over. And so what's interesting to me is that I had booked a Canadian kid from Timmins, middle of nowhere, really, but good kid, Terry Lemaire, 5-3 coming off a loss. And he had an offer in hand to fight Paulo Rosas on the Contender Series. He turned it down, citing an injury, and Gutierrez came in and filled in for him. So they were bringing in an inexperienced guy coming off a loss for Rosas originally. Gutierrez had a good-looking record, but he's tailor-made for the style of Rosas. That's all fine and well and good. He's young. He needs to experience new things and new styles and grow. But yeah, I feel like it's too much too soon, right? You can't just feed these guys. We've seen it happen to Chase Hooper. You've seen it happen to Sage Northcutt. You've seen it happen to, mind you, I think Rosas is a lot better and a lot more legitimate as a prospect. It's just a matter of you're giving them full-grown men, and this is what they do. And in Jay Perrin's case, yeah, this is what he does. He got 2 takedowns over Mario Batista. He had a lot of success clinging on to and clinching up with Batista against the cage. You don't think that he's fought in better levels of competition than Rosas? He's got a good cardio. He's got decent wrestling. He's strong and he's physical. And if you make that many mistakes that you made against Mando, he's going to be there to capitalize, no doubt about it. So part of me thinks that he's 100% a live underdog. Everyone likes the narrative of this 18-year-old whiz kid, but where are all the other 18-year-old whiz kids? If this was not, if this was a doable task, how come it's never happened before? And to me, it really does come back to, I don't know. I think we love the story more than we love the actual skills. He's got a very bright future, but similar to Makayev. Okay, Makayev's in a similar boat. Very young, very skilled. And it's like, damn, dude, this kid's the next world champion. And he smashes Cody Durden. Oh, my God, man, this guy's the best. And then he takes on Charles Johnson, former LFA champion, and takes him down 12 times. Oh, my God, Makayev. Then he takes on Malcolm Gordon, right? He's a 10-1 favorite. He's going to run right through Malcolm Gordon and damn near loses. Now, why is that? Because he's young, he's inexperienced, he's going to make mistakes. You're going to find different stylistical matchups, and then they're not going to favor him. And honestly, in this case, yeah, it could definitely happen. But this seems to be wrestler versus wrestler. Rosas seems like a work in progress, but has a legitimate skill set. And of course, I think the UFC is trying to match him up with the most appropriate guys possible. So I think that Rosas takes advantage of here, gets the decision, gets the win. I'm going to take the decision instead of the submission prop like you did. But all the same, I'm going to take a crack on this kid to win his UFC debut.
Yeah, no, you bring up some damn good points, and I'm glad that you brought up the Mokaev fight as well. Like that just shows you what the youth can potentially be in a negative aspect. Everybody talks about it as a positive aspect, being the younger, the more fitter guy, essentially by being the younger guy because you don't have as much wear and tear. But Mokaev almost messed it up for the people that unloaded their house on the inside the distance there, but luckily they're able to cash it in the dying seconds of that fight. All right. That is a wrap on the prelims. Shout out to all the 120 live viewers that we have with us on this Thursday evening. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe below if you haven't already. And let me just drop a quick word from our main sponsor, which is the All-Star app. If you want to stay up to date with mixed martial arts or any other sport, the All-Star app has you covered. Link in the description below. Any mobile device, you can download it on there, customize it however you like. I promise you guys are going to dig it. Check it out. All right, let us move right on into the main card here. And first fight on the main card, Cody talked about it at the top of the show. It's probably the one that I'm most excited about it as well. We got Ilia Topuria going up against Bryce Mitchell. In terms of odds, we got minus 140 on Topuria and plus 120 the return on Bryce Mitchell. Now, Ilia initially opened up at minus 150 and got quickly bet down to that minus 200 range. But over the last couple of days, that money has been coming in on Bryce Mitchell, putting Ilia Topuria around that minus 140 range now. This is a fun fight, right? I don't like when we have these two up-and-coming prospects like this go up against each other at this point in their careers, but at a certain time, you got to do it. I think next week we got another one where we got Damir Ismagulov going up against Arman Tsarukyan. Great fights, great prospects, and obviously Tsarukyan had a stumble in his last matchup, but still guys that are on the cusp of being that top 10 type of fighter. That's what Bryce Mitchell and Ilia Topuria are looking to cement themselves in with a win this weekend as well. Bryce, we know what his game plan is now, right? He wants to get you to the ground. He wants to either put you in a twister or try to get a dominant position where he can eventually either submit you or TKO you from on top. His striking game still needs a little bit of work, but just like Curtis Blades, we saw Bryce Mitchell hurt Edson Barboza on the feet because Edson was so scared about the takedown that was eventually going to come his way. So he ended up still getting him to the ground, pulverizing him. Good God, Edson Barboza, stop fighting grapplers. It breaks my heart every time you do that. But Bryce Mitchell continuing to showcase that he is somebody that we need to, keep our eye on. Now, his professional record says undefeated, but the real ones know that he lost to Brad Katona on The Ultimate Fighter a couple of years back and by submission as well. So that's something that people need to remember. Ilia Topuria, a guy that I've been following for a while now, since at least his fight with Brian Bouland on the Cage Warriors scene several years back. There was a point in time where he was a little bit inactive, and I was wondering where this guy was. I thought he would be a bright prospect, somebody that could potentially be in the top 10, maybe even the top 5 of the UFC. Then he just magically signs to the UFC on short notice against Yusuf Salal. And here he is, couple wins after, a couple devastating knockouts after as well. And he finds himself on the cusp of the top 10 of the featherweight division. I love what we get from this guy, man. He is improving striking, which is definitely his second martial art, as I believe he was one of the first ever black belts to come out of Spain, one of the younger guys as well. And we don't really see it on full display in his fights because he likes to go out there and throw bombs, right? He knocks out Damon Jackson with a beautiful body shot and then brings it up to the head and puts him down there. Ryan Hall keeps Imanari rolling into big ground and pound from Ilia Topuria, and Topuria gets him out of there. But this Bryce Mitchell one is going to be an interesting one because he will have the striking advantage. But how he's going to fare when this fight inevitably hits the ground, I think his BJJ black belt is going to come into play here, which will allow him to stay safe in these spots, maybe hit some reversals of his own, maybe get back to the feet where he can start letting go on his strikes again. It's all possible. We've seen people get up from under Bryce Mitchell. I think that Topuria is one of the more well-equipped guys to do so. Now, earlier this week, I wasn't sold on betting him at minus 180. I thought that line was a little bit too wide. We got to give some respect to Bryce Mitchell. But as this line starts to get closer and closer to that minus 130 range, that's where my fancy to bet him started to pop up. That's where I wanted to actually take a shot on him because I do think he's the better overall fighter. I still do have question marks about his gas tank as well, right? That third round against Yusuf Zalal, you see him struggle in that fight. He edges it out, he ekes it out, but we can maybe give him the benefit of the doubt because that fight was a short notice spot for him. We see him battle back from adversity against Jai Herbert, where he gets rocked early in that fight, eats a head kick that most fighters probably were not going to be able to eat. He eats it, comes back, knocks him out in the second round. Vicious knockout as well. I think it was a 3-punch combination where he absolutely turns off the lights of Jai Herbert. He is a solid prospect. There are going to be a lot of questions answered in this matchup because Bryce Mitchell is a tough out for him, but I think he knocks him out. I think he lands that big shot on Bryce Mitchell, probably in the second or third round of this matchup, and gets his hand raised in that aspect. The props a little bit tough for me because I do like the money line around that -130 range so much that I'm okay with the money line itself. I am going to predict Topuria by knockout, which is currently around +300 up to +320. But serious money, I would rather just put on Topuria money line than taking a shot on the KO. But this is a prop show, and I'm going to go with Topuria by knockout. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, fair enough. I think this one's got everyone's interest. As I was talking to my buddy John Pollock earlier, I said, listen, from my experience, the number 3 biggest thing that sells to an audience is a title fight. People like to see the shiny gold. They want to know who's the best. They're into title fights. The number 2 thing that sells to a fight audience is actual human drama. This guy does not like this person. They were training partners. They got in a fight in the bar. People love that. The number 1 thing that's going to draw your interest when 2 people are fighting, motherfucking flat earther versus a curved earther. It is on. Bryce Mitchell's gone and talked some whack ass nonsense. Now he needs to come and back it up. We talked about earlier, I can't call guys big black guys. I can call people hillbilly trash, and that is my boy Bryce Mitchell. Actually, he's hillbilly trash, but he's not inbred hillbilly trash. That's Sean Strickland. There is 2 divisions, right? You don't want to be the Sean Strickland inbred hillbilly trash. But Bryce Mitchell, yeah, he says some ridiculous stuff. He's got his own beliefs, but he's got a personality. And beyond that, he's got a good fight style. The UFC, again, firmly behind him. They give him his own shorts. He wears the camo shorts. They've built him up. They've given him smart fights. They've put the microphone in front of his face. And yeah, he's got some weird-ass things to say, but he draws an audience and people are into it. As far as his fight style goes, I think this guy's made just a wealth of improvements. You mentioned he lost in the Contender Series against Brad Katona. Katona, a lot more experience at the time. Katona, a 135er. And since then, by the way, Katona's got some badass wins on his record. But yeah, it's like Bryce, the sky's been the limit for him. He's just continuously getting better. First of all, being one of these Arkansas, boys from the sticks, he is strong, man. Physically is strong from his summers spent hanging in the field. If he gets a hold of you, he's going to rip you to the ground. He hadn't had elite level wrestling. He was more just strong and had jiu-jitsu, but now he wrestles at the University of Arkansas with their team, and I see a lot of improvements coming from him. He gets in on a single leg. He generally turns the corner. He takes you down. Now his striking, well, striking's non-existent, right? But man, look at that last fight. It's like, man, he's starting to lands a beautiful left hand. He's able to go out there and take on someone like Edson Barbosa and drop him with a clean punch. His striking looked good. Of course, his striking is all meant to close that distance and get a hold of you, take you to the ground, but you can see those other elements coming into play for him. His cardio is solid, his durability is solid, and I feel like his ability to take this fight into deeper waters is what's going to play out. Ilia Topuria, you mentioned in his first fight with Yusuf Zalal, the first couple of rounds, he looks great. The longer the fight goes, and that fight's not a hell of a grind, but there's a lot of wrestling exchanges in it. It tires him out. Now, the rest of the fight's always showing off some hand speed, and he's beating the Damon Jacksons of the world and getting seriously rocked by the Jai Herberts of the world before coming back. That's all well and good, but that's not Bryce Mitchell. You're not going to get bailed out by just landing some walk-off KO on him. I think the kid can take one hell of a punch, right? On top of that, it's like he's got solid cardio, and Topuria generally fights to his opponent's levels. He'll put himself in bad spots. He makes questionable decisions in there. He's going to probably go out there with a chip on his shoulder that, hey, everybody likes Bryce Mitchell. Everybody knows Bryce Mitchell can grapple. The guy's got the twister. I'm going to prove a point by out grappling him. Don't do that. Sprawl and brawl him. But he won't. He'll engage him. He'll try to make a point. He'll play into Bryce's hand, and I feel like Bryce is going to end up, I don't think he submits him. I just think he wins 2 of the 3 rounds and ends up taking a decision. He's got the better wrestling, I would say. He's stronger. He's got better cardio. I would say he's got a slight advantage on the ground. I know that sounds crazy because Topuria is a BJJ black belt and this and that, but like you don't see him use it, right? Whereas like Bryce, it's his bread and butter. He will get to it. And when he gets to it, it's like wrangling a little pony, which I'm sure he's got a lot of experience doing. He's a strong boy. So I got to go with Mitchell. I think a lot of the people that are fading him this week just don't like the guy, which I can't complain about because, I mean, again, he says whack-ass stuff, but I feel like if you look for it for skill wise, he's like a breakout star in the making. He's got a lot of problems for guys. And if you told me to make you a short list of Americans that fight like Russians, he's on it, man. Like, he's got the winning style, and I think that it's going to go a long way.
Yeah, it is a very interesting fight for sure. We get to see, how much potential Bryce actually has, and even on the Ilya Topuria side as well. But I know a lot of people have this fight circled, me and you included. I can't wait to see it go down. And it is a great fight to kick off the main card of this UFC 282 pay-per-view event. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We're going to be going up to the middleweight division. Now, we got the return of Darren Till, who's going to be coming in as an underdog in this matchup. And we're talking about plus 150. On the flip side, for Dricus du Plessis, we got minus 175. Now, this fight was actually closer in odds. We had minus 135 on Dricus du Plessis. He even got up to a pick'em line, but then that money slowly started to roll in on him, making him a minus 180 favorite. And it's hard to argue against that, right? Darren Till hasn't really been in the best form over his last several fights. And this dates back to his title shot against Tyron Woodley, where it seemed like the UFC had put all their eggs in his basket, only for him to go out there and get freaking Darce choked by Tyron Woodley and lose that fight. But since that fight, he has gone 1-3. His only win was a split decision victory over Kelvin Gastelum, which was his return fight after getting starched by Jorge Masvidal in front of his hometown crowd. But he has had a ton of fights fall through. His body has been very fragile from, having a broken collarbone to going into the Derek Brunson fight with a torn ACL. It seems like the guy could just not catch a break. Now he's changed his preparation up completely. He used to train at Team Kaoban, I think was the name of that gym out there in England. But he switched things up. He's gone to Sweden to train with Hamzat Chimaev for a little while. But over the last 8 weeks, it seems like he's been over there in Thailand, changing between gyms, between Bang Tao Muay Thai as well as Tiger Muay Thai. He's been getting a lot of good training with phenomenal training partners. Most notably, Marvin Vettori even made the trip over there to Thailand to train with him for a little bit. I'm not sure for how long, but you can definitely see them getting some rounds in. But he's been training with a lot of killers, a lot of unknown killers as well. So I'll be interested to see anything that he's been able to absorb from those guys and how he's going to look to implement it with his own game. But when he was at his best, he could utilize his distance management and his range and kind of his power, right? Like, his power is something that a lot of people talk about, but the reality of the fact is he hasn't notched knockout in over 5 years. The last time he knocked out anybody was Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who was already on death's door in terms of his career. So that is a big red flag for me, personally speaking. But, since being at middleweight, this is the second time he's fighting, in my opinion, a true welterweight. Now I know, or a true middleweight, sorry. I know Dricus du Plessis used to fight at welterweight as well, but he is going to have the size and reach advantage over Till here, which is something that Till used to enjoy over most of his opponents when he competed down at welterweight. So he can't really use that distance striking style as comfortably as he used to at 170 pounds. He's going to be dealing with a madman in Dricus du Plessis across the cage from him, who throws with nothing with sheer power in his own right. Technically speaking, I think Darren Till is the better striker, but all of that is thrown out the window when you have a guy as explosive as Dricus du Plessis. Now, du Plessis, besides his last fight against Brad Tavares, which he won by decision, he goes out there and knocks out most of his opponents. That could come to fruition here again, as Darren Till has been obviously starched in the past himself. But I have a lot of question marks in terms of how this fight is going to play out, because we don't know what kind of Darren Till we're going to get. One, is he going to actually be healthy? Two, apparently it took him 4 days to get from Thailand to Las Vegas. How is that going to play into his preparation for this matchup? And three, what if he has completely changed his style since being away from so long, completely changing training camps, going to Thailand to train and prepare for this matchup? There are way too many question marks in this fight for me to confidently pick a side. I am going to go with the du Plessis side. I don't like the minus 180, but I think that this is one of those fights where we do see it be a tepid paced kickboxing fight where both guys are trying to land their strikes from the outside. Darren Till likes playing that range game, and that might not translate to a potential knockout victory for Dricus du Plessis, which he seemed to rely on a lot earlier on in his career. So I'll go with du Plessis. I'll go with the overs here as well. Again, a little bit of a cheeky play here. The over 2.5 currently sitting at plus 115. I could see, again, tepid pace kickboxing matchup where it goes the distance, it goes to the scorecards, and I think the more active fighter here will eventually be the Dricus du Plessis side, and I think he wins this fight via decision, plus 300 on that line as well, if I'm not mistaken. Plus 350 is what I see now as well. That's what I'm going to be leaning, but not with the most amount of confidence. What are you thinking here, Cody? I got you muted, my friend.
Yeah, you're very probably right on this one. All your points make sense. And I probably should just avoid it altogether, but I'm feeling that slight dog play on Darren Till. So I know, again, it all comes down to narrative. And wow, Darren Till's shot and he's got injuries and he's not a contender anymore. And I agree with all those points. I don't think he was ever that good to begin with. I don't think that at middleweight he's suddenly going to, find the key. However, the guy can't just be completely written off. You mentioned, he hasn't knocked anybody since Donald Cerrone. He knocked down Stephen Wonderboy Thompson just after that. He knocked down George Masvidal just after that. He seriously rocked Robert Whittaker in his fight with him. Maybe the KOs are not materializing, but he's got nasty power on him. He's got a beautiful left hand straight down the middle. Doesn't throw enough volume, but long, southpaw, stays at the outside, ways to intercept. He wants to counterpunch. If you try to counterpunch him, he's awful. He'll stand there and stare at you. The problem with him fighting Tyron Woodley is Woodley's a counterpuncher. The problem with his fight with Stephen Thompson's a counterpuncher. They need to force the action. That's when a counterpuncher is going to be at his best. If he's forced to lead the dance, he's just really not all that good. So in the instance of this particular fight, Dricus is going to come at him, and it's going to allow him to set up shop and use his weapons. Dricus can mix in the wrestling a little bit. That's the only takeaway that I would have from Till training with Khamzat Chimaev is hope to God he stuffed a few takedowns in camp. Hope to God that if he has to sprawl and brawl a little bit here, that he's got the means to hopefully stop those takedowns and stay to the outside. But I think that one and done striking, whereas it's not working versus a lot of guys, I think it can work quite well against Dricus. Dricus du Plessis, and as much as I love the guy, and I really do, he leaves his head way up in the air and charges straight down the center line. Sure, he beat Brad Tavares his last time out, but does anybody remember that first round? Because he's rocked left, right, and center, right? His chin is good, not great. He gets hit a whole lot. He leaves it way up in the air, and he charges it on center line. So when you're fighting Darren Till, he's a former title challenger. He's a big personality. He might be done. That's all motivation for I'm going to go make a statement and take this guy out. It's possible that you can, but if you're going to come out overzealous and you're going to charge straight at this guy, he's going to put that left hand on the chin. And I just got a nagging suspicion that it's going to topple him down. So seeing Till, no doubt he's battling injuries. He doesn't have a ton of money. I don't think he ever made the millions of dollars in MMA. So is he taking a fight compromised? Has he been taking fights compromised? Is he a scouser? Is he drinking between fights? Is there a million question marks with Darren Till? 100% there is. But again, I think when you look at, who's he been fighting? Name me one bad guy that has, beaten Darren Till. It's okay, let's trash him. Let's look at his record. Oh, shit, man. Derek Brunson, top 5 contender. Geez. Robert Whittaker, former champion. George Masvidal, former title challenger. Tyron Woodley, former world champion. Does anybody else beat him? No. They are creme de la creme type guys. And I do like Dricus, I do. But Dricus is going from fighting way weaker competition to now all of a sudden jumping in there with maybe Till's not what he used to be. I get it. But I just think that there's too much recency bias. People like Dricus. Dricus has been winning fights. People don't like Till. Till's been losing fights. Easy, right? No, I don't think it's that straightforward. I think Till's got something for him. So the plus 150 on Darren Till, again, tempting, but it would just be for fun, small little play. But if Darren's going to win, and not going to be a decision. And if Darren's going to win, and not going to be a submission. Darren's going to win. It's going to be a KO. And plus 400 on the KO line, I think you could do way worse than that. Partly it's Darren Tane hit. Partly it's Dricus is going to run straight into punches. But I just feel like it's a bad recipe for disaster for him.
Yeah, a part of me wants to see Darren Till be successful this week, and I'm not sure what it is. I've never really been a big fan of the guy or anything like that, but it hurts me to see him going through such rough times in his MMA career, right? 1-4 in his last 5 fights, just not a good look. But we'll see if he can change the ship this weekend. Yeah,
I'll throw something on there. Just shout out to the chess martial artist, and he mentions the fact that it's a confidence thing. He's Till doesn't have that confidence anymore, and bro, man, you're 100% right on. Because I remember when Darren Till debuted in the UFC, I picked him as an underdog in his debut. It was in Brazil, and UFC used to do a questionnaire. They'd send all the fighters on the roster, where do you train, how did you get into martial arts, and it was great for cappers because you could always draw back on this stuff and be this guy's a judo black belt who's been doing judo for 10 years because it told you that info. You didn't have to scour around. It was kind of straight up for you. So when Darren Till debuted, he's a Brazilian, or he's a English kid who got stabbed in England. They forced him to leave England and go to Brazil. Bro, you're not going to get stabbed in Brazil? Come on. Moves to Brazil. He had a weird ass story on him. So I go to check out his UFC questionnaire, and in it, they're like, who's your favorite fighter? And he's like, me. I'm my favorite fighter. And they're like, who's the best fighter in the world? He's like, me. I'll smash all these guys. Everything was geared towards I'm the best. And when you look at that early portion of his career, he believes it and he fights accordingly. Somewhere down the line, he starts to lose. He throws up a stinker against Woodley in his own backyard. And the fight with Wonder Boy, he won, but I didn't think he won. It didn't look particularly good. It was another stinker. And then he gets the injuries. Now it's like maybe he doesn't have that same self-belief. What I'm hoping that if anything of hanging out with Khamzat Chimaev would do for you is get some of that swag back, dog. If you can get some of that swag and have some of that self-belief, sit down on one of them left hand straight down the pipe. Dreykus is going to be sitting there. He is going to be there to get hit. Just need Till to put on that money shot. So, I don't really like him either, to be honest with you. But there's something about him that it's I'd rather live in a world where he is fighting in the UFC than a world where he's in PFL winning $1 million.
Every week, Cody. Every week.
Bro, Michael Johnson looked like a fucking millionaire on Saturday.
Right?
Don't tell me he didn't look like $1 million bucks, right?
He made me rip up a parlay ticket there for sure. But
Hermanson is what killed me, but Johnson didn't help out.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's keep this trade moving along because we got another very fun fight coming up. This is actually going to be taking place at a 180-pound catch weight. We got Santiago Ponzinibbio coming in at minus 180, and the short notice replacement, Alex the Great White Morono, coming in at plus 155. Now, Robbie Lawler, unfortunately, had to pull out of the fight. I believe it was late last week. In steps Alex Morono, and even though it's not Robbie Lawler, I still think the entertainment value of this fight is still there. Because Alex Morono is a slugger, man. Cody, we've broken down so many Alex Morono fights since we've been doing this show, and we talk about his BJJ black belt, but the one holdup we've always had is this guy just doesn't go for takedowns. And there was that one time where I'm like, he might finally go for it, and he actually did. But he doesn't rely on it more than he should, given how good of a BJJ black belt he is. But the guy likes to throw. The guy likes to throw the bungalows and try to knock you out, and it's worked out for him pretty well. He puts on a good pace, good pressure, good volume, and that's usually enough to break his opponents, just what he did against Matt Semmelsberger the last time around. Now he's going to have to do it against Santiago Ponzinibbio, which I think is a very tough task for him. Now, he makes up for his technical deficiencies with his grit, with his pressure, with his pace, and a lot of guys crumble under that. I don't think that Ponzinibbio will, though. I think this will be target practice for Ponzinibbio, if I'm being honest. I think he's going to shred up that lead leg of Alex Morono with consistent leg kicks, and then after that, let go with his power combinations. He will likely be the faster striker of the two because Alex Morono sometimes looks like he's fighting in mud, but Santiago Ponzinibbio is technically the better fighter here. I don't care if he, is on a little bit of a rough stretch. He hasn't looked like that 7-fight winning streak fighter we knew from back in 2018, where he pulled off that 4th round TKO victory over Neil Magny in front of his hometown crowd in Argentina. He had to deal with some sort of bacterial blood infection that kept him out of action for over 2 years, came back and got knocked out by Li Jingliang. Picked up a good win over Miguel Baeza, where he dealt with adversity in that fight, came back and won the 2nd and 3rd round and got his hand raised. But coming up short in a closely contested fight against Jeff Neal, coming up short against, Michel Pereira, who tough style for him, right? Michel has really mastered that run and gun style of striking where he just stays on the outside, uses his kicks and his wacky unorthodox movements. And it's hard for fighters to hit him back because he's just never there to get hit. But now he's going to have a guy who's willing to stand in front of him and try to chain or trade and exchange in the pocket. I'm picking Ponzinibbio here. I think Ponzinibbio will do a damn good job of landing his leg kicks, landing his punches. And I think, I'm not going to make it a lock of the night play by any means, but I think he could knock him out here. We saw Morono get charged by Chaos Williams, and Chaos Williams is one of the biggest hitters the UFC has ever seen. But I think, and we all both know this, the last thing to really leave a fighter is that power. And given the stylistic matchup here, I think Ponzinibbio knocks out Alex Morono. I'm not even going to call around because I think the KO prop here at plus 215 is good enough. But even his money line at minus 180, I feel like that's a big steal here in terms of the price we're getting, considering the skill discrepancy we have here. And as long as Ponzinibbio's chin isn't completely gone since that Li Jingliang fight, the last couple of fights that he's had leads me to believe that his durability is still there. He should be able to put the pressure on Morono here and eventually finish him. So give me Ponz by knockout plus 215. Cody, do you agree? Or do you think the Great White pulls this one off as well?
Yeah, MMA is a fickle bitch, eh? People keep bringing up that Jing Liang Li thing. They're like, dude, Pons ain't what he used to be, man. Can't take a punch no more. It's like, man, in his last 2 fights, he fought Michel Pereira and Jeff Neal. Arguably won both of those fights. Loses close, very competitive split decisions. Takes all types of damage. We're that worried about his chin. I don't know, man. I don't think Morono's the biggest power puncher. I think Morono, if anything, he's a wily body, gets in there. He's willing to stand in front of you. He's willing to throw. He's got the BJJ black belt, as you mentioned, just never really uses it. He's kind of like a gatekeeper type guy. He can give you some rounds. He's outside the top 15, but he's taking the fight on super short notice. And honestly, I'm very happy he's taking the fight because Robbie Lawler, my boy, I didn't want to see Robbie go in there and get beat up right before Christmas. Like, who wants to see this shit, right? Didn't love the fight with Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio versus Morono, like it a lot better because it's going to allow Ponzinibbio to do what he does, and that's rack up big numbers, right? Rack up the volume, and I think that he's capable of doing that. You look at his fight with Pereira, he lands 105. But the thing with Pereira is that he's super explosive. He's got the big knee. He's got the big right hand. He's one of these guys that it's hard to corral up against the cage and land volume on. And still 105 landed by Santiago Ponzinibbio. The fight before with Jeff Neal, he outstruck Jeff Neal 91-85 and scored the takedown. A lot of people, including myself, thought he beat Jeff Neal. Unfortunately, comes up on the wrong side of a split decision. But again, you're seeing tremendous volume out of him. Alex Morono, not a big power puncher. And then for a guy that doesn't have that big KO power, he's not throwing enough for my liking. Yes, he did against Matthew Semmelsberger, say his last time out. Yes, he has in the past. But you look at his list of opponents, Mickey Gall, Matthew Semmelsberger, David Zawada. None of these guys really failed to crack into that upper echelon of the division. So yeah, he's been able to be competitive with them and throw some volume. But against Santiago Ponzinibbio, I just feel like Ponzinibbio just touches him up from the outside, uses the speed advantage, uses those leg kicks, demobilizes him, causes him not be able to move, and then starts to find a home for his hands. You mentioned Ponzinibbio by knockout. I think it's certainly possible. I think I'm going to go towards the Ponzinibbio by decision. Morono can take a decent enough shot. I think Pons is 37 years old. He is getting a little bit older and officially lands a lot of volume, but maybe not the biggest power guy anymore. Since he knocked out Neil Magny 5 years ago, he had, as you mentioned, health issues, an eye problem, a blood infection problem. Since he's come back, I wouldn't say the power is not the same, but maybe not getting those same results. So I think Morono's there to take the beating, but does last the 15 minutes, and we get a Santiago Ponzinibbio by decision prop hit.
I'm not mad at that at all, right? Like I'm more so invested on the money line here. So no matter how he wins, I'll be happy. But I can definitely see that side of things as well. All right, let's get to the co-main event now, which a lot of people might think is the main event, given how much publicity it's gotten this week. We got Paddy the Baddy Pimblett coming in at minus 250, plus 210, the return on Jared Gordon. Now, I've been waiting for the last couple fights to just find that fighter that I feel like we can get a good enough price tag on, knowing that Paddy is obviously going to get that hype and that public betting money just because he's Paddy the fucking Baddy. And I think I finally found the guy that I'm willing to part ways with my money and be okay with losing, a unit or so on just to take the shot on him as a big underdog. Because Jared Gordon, 11 fight UFC veteran, has fought some of the best in the division. He's gone 7-4 against a lot of those guys. Very rugged, tough fighter. Similar to a Billy Quarantillo in the fact that he just keeps on the gas. He stays in your face. He makes fights uncomfortable for you. Like if you want to see a quintessential Jared Gordon fight, just watch his last fight against Leonardo Santos. He put that guy through the ringer. He just stayed on him the entire time, put him in the clinch, roughed him up there, roughed him up at distance. Probably didn't want to take the fight to the ground given the BJJ background of Leonardo Santos there, but he really put it on him and he showcased why, he's a solid fighter, somewhat reliable fighter at times. But all of his losses have come via finish. And that's the kind of holdup I have here in terms of not putting the house on Jared Gordon in this spot, because Paddy, although known as a grappler, still has some big power in his hands that could cause Jared Gordon some issues. But I think that Paddy's just not fought a guy like this in the past, right? He's fought like the Julian Rosas and the Nad Naramanis, and he's come up short against some of those guys. But Jared Gordon could do the Nad Naramani thing here, where he is able to take him to the ground and he is able to grind him out. He did it against a high-level black belt in Joe Selecki a couple fights ago. It wasn't the greatest first round for him, but he bounced back in the second and third, and he was able to ground him, stay on top of him, stay outside of the submissions, and grind him out. He could do the same thing here against Paddy. But Paddy will be live this entire time. He isn't a guy that has cardio issues. He always has power in his hands, and he's always live to win a fight. In all three of his UFC fights, he's come back from adversity. He's gotten rocked in a couple of them. He's gotten taken down and controlled in a couple of them, but he's always come back and he's always found the finish. That is absolutely live for him to do that here against Jared Gordon. But plus 215 on a guy like Jared Gordon against a guy who clearly is only a huge favorite because of the popularity and hype around his name, sign me up. I like Jared Gordon in a spot, even on just the money line. But if we want to look at a specific prop, which is what this show is based on, I think he grinds him out over 15 minutes and takes home a decision victory, which currently sits at plus 450 all the way up to plus 500 on certain books. Yes, I'm going to be shitting my pants the entire time because I know Paddy could potentially put him out, but I think we have a fighter with a good enough skill set, good enough experience, and the perfect tools to make it a rough night for a guy like Paddy Pimblett. So give me Jared Gordon here. Gordon by decision, plus 450, like I said. But I think we don't need to get greedy. Just take the money line, plus 215, call it a day. What are you thinking here? Am I too high on Gordon, or does Paddy finally get derailed?
Yeah, so actually, this is not the people's main event. This is the people's co-main event. The people's main event would be Paddy Pimblett versus Ariel Helwani right afterwards, right? So that's where the attention is. But no, honestly, I think you're onto a bunch of good points. I want to take Jared Gordon. I feel like Jared Gordon could get it done. I feel like I'm not going to pull the trigger on him this time and maybe give it one more. We're getting down to that level where Paddy's going to run into some trouble. On the regional scene, same thing. He's got a problem with getting overpowered. You mentioned the Nadner Armani fight. Nadner Armani just holds him down the entire time, with relative ease. And then he fights Soren Beck on the regional scene on Cage Warriors. And Soren Beck, lightweight for the record, just holds him down the whole time. Like, they're way stronger than him physically. That's going to be an issue for him going forward. When you look at his 3 fights in the UFC, rocked by Vendramini, gets up, rocks him back fine. Kozilo Vargas, he slips and lets Vargas get on top. And Vargas has like a minute and a half, 2 minutes of top control. That's problematic. The Jordan Levitt fight. Levitt can't wrestle for shit, and yet he got 3 takedowns on Paddy Pimblett and almost 4 minutes of top control from just sitting in his guard. So, yeah, you got a problem, dude. You got Jared Gordon here, who's a BJJ brown belt under John Danaher. He can wrestle. He's out of one of the best gyms in the world over at Killcliff FC. He's got Gilbert Burns as his jiu-jitsu coach. They'll have a good game plan that revolves around getting a couple key takedowns and then setting up shop in his guard and holding him down, no doubt about it. So he poses a lot of problems. He's got a style that can be very problematic for Paddy Pimblett. And I think maybe he's that underdog that's going to come through and get the job done. The other part of me is why Jared Gordon? Because he's got no name. So why would you not get somebody who was more washed up but had more reputation? I'm not Anthony Pettis is cut, but get somebody like that. Get someone that was at one point a big star, just doesn't have that skill set anymore. Instead, they get Jared Gordon, who's your quintessential grinder, bro. He doesn't have a huge reputation, but he's going to give you a tough fight. Why would you give him that one? Why would that be the one? Co-main event spot, almost makes you feel nervous. But from what I can see from Jared Gordon is he's super slow. He doesn't have any explosiveness. He's plodding. He's a grinder. He's blue collar. He's going to stick with the fight. But in terms of coming on top of these quick transitions, he's just kind of a step behind. When you look at his own grappling, he's only rocking a 39% takedown accuracy and a 58% takedown defense. He gave up 7 takedowns to Grant Dawson, 4 to Joe Selecki, 1 to Danny Chavez, 2 to Dan Moret, 1 to Joaquim Silva. He's given up quite a few takedowns. More concerning to me is that Selecki fight in the first round. He gets taken down and he just gives up his back right away, right? The Grant Dawson fight, he gets taken down, he gives up his back right away. Now Selecki tires out and Dawson doesn't. So the difference between those 2 fights is he's able to come back in the Selecki fight. For the record, rewatch that fight. He almost loses. It is as close of a decision as you're going to get. He doesn't look particularly good. He relies on Selecki tiring out. Dawson didn't tire out. Instead, he just kept going to the same position. Take him down, take his back, and ends up choking him out with less than a minute on the clock. To me, the latter is going to happen. Paddy's going to be able to go out there, shoot a couple takedowns, create some transitions, create some scrambles, and then just get on top, end up on top, take the back. Once he takes the back, you should put the body triangle in and just tick time off. I could see him landing a big shot on Jared Gordon standing because Gordon's a little bit chinny. I can see him landing that submission late in the third because, of course, he's got good submissions, and Gordon got caught late in the third against Dawson, so it's definitely possible. But I'm leaning towards you're saying You're saying Gordon by decision. I'm leaning Patty by decision. I think he just takes his back in 2 of the 3 rounds, holds on, grinds him out, survives around if he needs to, and ends up getting a decision. So plus 200 on the Patty line, not as good as like the plus 400 you'd be looking at on the Jared Gordon by decision line. But I decided to go with Patty. Now, I would love to fade him in the future. I'd love to fade him against somebody that he's not going to take down. But Jared Gordon rocking a abysmal takedown defense and tends to give his back in a lot of scrambles. That just, to me, seems like a recipe for disaster.
That definitely could be the downfall of Jared Gordon this week, and we'll see how it plays out. But Barstool hoping that Paddy Pimblett comes through for them this weekend, because that Molly McCann experiment did not work out the best for them. Worst managing moment ever, right? How dare you take a woman like Molly McCann, who's on a winning streak the way that she is, and put her up against a beast like Aaron Blatchfield? We'll see.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's the thing. It's like they gave her such a bad fight and she got rolled up in it, that it's like, is it not possible that Patty's doing the same thing? And again, I don't know whose idea it was. I was like, dude, I got a guy, Jared Gordon. Yeah. If you beat Jared Gordon, no one's gonna give a shit. If you lose to Jared Gordon, bro, he's a 35-year-old ex-junkie, fucking died, okay, comes back from the dead, falls into obscurity, and then somehow is grinding up low-level wins in the UFC. You lose to him, oh, it's not good. And if you think Patty eats lots when he's celebrating, you should see Patty eat when he's sad. Ooh, it's worse, man. We're talking pints of ice cream first thing in the morning.
Oh, I can't wait to see that fight go down. Probably the fight that I'm second most excited for, behind Topuria and Bryce Mitchell. All right, we got one fight left to go with you guys. I do want to remind the 140 live viewers that we currently have with us to hit that like, hit that subscribe. Let the All-Star folks that you guys, let them know that you guys enjoy seeing us on a weekly basis on their channel. Drop a comment as well, if you so please. We appreciate that. All right, let's get to this main event, Cody. Light heavyweight title on the line, vacant light heavyweight title on the line. And as I said at the top of the show, the last time the vacant light heavyweight title was on the line, Jan Blachowicz found himself as one of the challengers for it. Obviously, that night he picked it up and won the title by defeating Dominic Reyes, but he has stiffer competition this time around as he goes up against Dagestani killer, hot prospect. I don't know if we can still call him a prospect because he's about to fight for a title, Magomed Ankalaev. In terms of odds, we got minus 285 on Ankalaev and plus 240 the return on Jan Blachowicz. Now, Blachowicz had a bit of a career resurgence after he knocked out Corey Anderson right before COVID hit, and that ended up earning him a title shot to fight Dominic Reyes for the title, which he ended up winning. And then he loses it to Glover Teixeira shortly thereafter. He did manage to defend it against Israel Adesanya before that, but again, not against a light heavyweight, but he did manage to get at least one defense in. Now he's going up against Magomed Ankalaev, who is probably a much tougher puzzle than anybody that he's faced in the past. Ankalaev is a slick striker, especially, coming from that Dagestani region where people think they only have grappling. He is one of probably, if not the best striker to come out of that Dagestani region, maybe with the exception of Usman Nurmagomedov and Umar Nurmagomedov as well. But I love his style because he fights so comfortably out of both stances. He's just as comfortable from the southpaw position as he is from the orthodox position. And he fucks with his opponent so much that he gauges what stance they're going to be fighting in, and he just goes to the opposite stance. So if he's fighting a southpaw, he'll go orthodox. If they want to switch mid-fight and go orthodox, he'll go southpaw. He always wants to have that advantage, and then he knows how to or exaggerate that advantage by being so effective with it. The only time, outside of the whole Paul Craig last second mishap that we've seen him slip up was when he got that second round or knocked down in the second round of his fight against Thiago Santos or 2 fights ago. People wanted to write him off after that. I'm like, the greats fall every now and then, right? They always slip up every now and then. Let's not just completely write him off just because he got knocked down one time by Thiago Santos, who's still a very big hitter. The guy regrouped, managed to go out there and win a 25-minute decision, and it was a lackluster performance. A lot of people expected him to finish Thiago Santos that night, but give the man some props that he wanted to see that 25-minute mark so that he can get that experience in preparation for a matchup like this, which just so happened to fall into his lap because the whole Yuri Prochazka debacle that's going on with his shoulder injury and ultimately vacating the title. Yes, he'll have to worry a little bit about that Polish power, but I think he's so disciplined in the striking realm that he's going to nullify a lot of that success from Jan Blachowicz. If he feels a little bit too much pressure on the feet, I think he can go to the Dagestani wrestling if he needs to. And yes, Blachowicz, I believe, is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and people might be like, hey, Paul Craig submitted this guy. Blachowicz is going to be dangerous off his back too. But Cody, when is the last time you remember a guy as aggressive off their back with their BJJ at light heavyweight than Paul Craig? Nobody. Like, nobody's as active off his back as Paul Craig. He's an anomaly in the light heavyweight division with his BJJ. So I don't think Blachowicz will have that success. Blachowicz, possible Polish power, that is like his only way of winning this fight, in my opinion. If this goes 25 minutes, I think Ankalaev is the one that ends up landing the better strikes, maybe even mixes in the grappling, gets that top control. I'm totally on board with that. I like Ankalaev here. I like him around that, minus 255 is what I got him earlier in this week. He's up at minus 285. Completely makes sense. I think he actually gets the knockout as well. Plus 100 on him to win inside the distance, or by knockout, I believe it is. I think he eventually lands that knockout later on in this matchup. As Blachowicz starts getting behind on the scorecards, we'll see him get a little bit more desperate, try to land that Polish power, and I think he's going to get countered here and eventually put out. I'm going Ankalaev by knockout. And no matter who wins this matchup, but I think we're officially entering the Magomed Ankalaev era, which I promise you will last longer than the Lyoto Machida era. What do you think in your head, Cody?
Yeah, man, honestly, I agree. Actually, I know a couple of people that had Ankalaev to be champion by the end of 2022 ticket, right?
So I don't know to cash that.
I don't know if your book's going to cash it or not, because you know how books are. They're going to be like, oh, whoa, it's a vacant interim title. Like, they'll have some bullshit, but yeah, I think everybody believes that the guy's got the skill to be the world champion. It's just a matter of when's he going to get his time. No one really wants to fight him, but yeah, he's surgical. I mean, he's one of these great Dagestani fighters. Unlike a lot of those pure wrestling purists that come out of Chechnya and Dagestan, like, this guy can actually strike. Not only that, he's got brilliant ring IQ. Now, I know people will say, well, he's a little boring and he's not going for it. Man, all the greatest fighters in the world have been considered boring. John Jones considered boring. Khabib Nurmagomedov considered boring. Georges St-Pierre considered boring. People don't like you dominating. People don't like risk adverse. People don't like you beating up the guy and not getting hit in return. But that's what champions are made out of, and that's what Magomed Ankalaev can exactly do. He's super well-rounded, and if he wants to take you to the ground, he's got the ability to do so. He's got solid ground and pound. He's got solid transitions, stays out of trouble. And then in terms of his striking, he stays right in front of you, but just has that wherewithal to just get out of the way, dodge out of the way, good head movement. And the one thing about him, his chin, maybe he can take a punch, maybe he can't. You've never seen anybody hit him. Thiago sits him. Thiago's a hell of a power puncher. You want to know how hard Thiago Santos hits? Why don't you go ask Jan Blachowicz? I'm sure he doesn't remember it. But he goes down, he gets right back up and just resumes what he was doing, staying right in front of him. Why not wrestle more in that spot against Thiago? Didn't need to. Confident in himself. So I think he's got the goods that he could go out there and win a world title. It just depends on what kind of fight he's going to bring to Jan. You mentioned Jan, BJJ black belt. The thing about that, yeah, he is a BJJ black belt. No BJJ black belt was going to tap that fucking fast against Glover Teixeira. I get it's Glover, right? But Glover was like, maybe I should go for the rear naked. And Jan was like, oh, fuck this, I'm out of here. He bailed, dog. He bailed right out of that situation. So to me, there's issues that I think you can just beat him up, put him through the pace. He's got injuries. The whole Polish power narrative, it was dope. Here's a guy in his mid-30s, late 30s, who starts off his UFC career 2 wins and 4 losses, who's a non-contender, just rises the ranks and wins a world title. What a great story. It's not a resurgence from him. It's a resurgence in his bookings. He fights Luke Rockhold, a near 40-year-old middleweight with a massive staph infection in his leg. Okay, he beats him. He beats Jacare, a near 40-year-old middleweight who's way past his prime. Corey Anderson, currently losing in Bellator. Dominic Reyes, career is completely shot to bits. Beats a middleweight in Israel Adesanya. That was the big one. That got him, he's already a champion at this point, but now you just beat Izzy and you get the reputation. But there's no doubt about it. Luke Rockhold, Jacare Souza, Corey Anderson, Dominic Reyes, that's a soft run. It's a soft run to the top. The Glover fight to me showed that he was older. He was breaking down. Glover tries to go for a couple can openers on the ground, and Jan just allows him to do it. What BJJ black belt's getting fucking can opener? Jan got can opener 2 times in the opening round and ends up submitting to a rear naked choke in the second. I went online afterwards. I says, I guarantee this guy's got a neck injury. If you look at him, he pulls out of his very next UFC fight due to a neck injury. I'm guaranteeing you he's compromised there. So now he gets Alexander Rakic. He looked like shit for the first 2 rounds. And then Rakic hurts himself. Dems to breaks, my friend. These things happen in MMA. But to me, there's a clear sign there. There's a regression from him. He's a lot older. His body's not in the same shape. You want that title fight, but it's like, oh man, I'm going to get the title fight. He's trying to work his way into it. He's trying to talk his way into it. And then Glover and Yuri have a crazy good fight. And Jan's begging Yuri, give me the fight. You want to be a samurai? You want to fight the best guys? Fight me. Begging for it, right? When they decide to book go in a different direction, to me, it was like, Jan, that might be his last kick at the can. So to get a phone call, do you want to fight for an interim title and fight Ankalaev? The answer is yes. But does that mean he's in shape? Does that mean his body's ready to go? Or is it just such a big opportunity to headline a pay-per-view to end the year? It's too big of an opportunity to pass away. I'm going to go with the latter. I think Ankalaev has his way, puts him through the paces. To me, I'm thinking like you're saying, the inside the distance. Ankalaev's more of a decision guy. Jan's been durable throughout his career, but this is 5 rounds of what I'm thinking is going to be largely one-way traffic, and I think Jan's body will just eventually break more than anything. So I am going to go with that Ankalaev inside the distance, which is about -105, and then probably not the popular play this week, but like small little stab at it. Ankalaev by submission at +1400 for no other reason than Jan's hurt. And if he's hurt and if he's in a bad spot and it's the 4th round and he doesn't really feel like being there anymore and Ankalaev just touches his hand around the guy's neck, I seen him do it before, he'd be tapping out. So plus 1400, I think it's definitely worth a shot.
Man, I feel like I'm getting some PTSD because I feel like I've done that Ankalaev submission thing a couple times. I think the last time was the Volkan Oezdemir fight. We've seen Volkan Oezdemir tap to a neck crank in the past, and obviously we expected him to have a tremendous grappling advantage should he have looked to take it there, but he ended up knocking him out anyway. So did he knock him out? Yeah, he did knock him out. But yeah, that's where I'm getting the PTSD here, hoping that for you, at least for your sake, he cashes that +1400, but we'll see how it ends up going here. I'm not sure why. He beat him by decision. He just outstruck Volkan. I'm not sure why I thought he knocked him out for some reason. Anyway, that is a wrap on the breakdowns. We appreciate everybody checking out the show as always. Let's do this last thing here, which is the 3 best prop bets. And I'll kick it off as I normally do. And I'll start off with the Billy Quarantillo inside the distance, +155. Happy with that line. Good to get plus money there. We know what the Billy Q style is. Drag into deep waters and drown you. That's what I'm expecting him to do here. Not to mention the fact that Hernandez trying to make 145 pounds for the first time in 9 years. That will probably compromise him come fight time. And the last person you want to be compromised against, especially with the cardio, is a guy like Billy Quarantillo. Not just Quarantillo inside the distance, +155. Let's sprinkle a little bit of that round 3 prop as well at +1000. Next up, I'm going to go Shahbazyan inside the distance, -125. I think he is the far superior fighter here against Dalcha, and I think we'll see him, or at least this will be a great fight for him to go out there and showcase his striking prowess that he was so successful with early in his UFC career. I think this change to Extreme Couture will allow him to be the best version of himself, and I think we'll see him go out there and get an early stoppage in this matchup. -125, a solid line in my opinion. And then lastly, I'm going to go Vinicius Salvador, round 2, +550. A little bit of a cheeky play, as I called it when we broke down this fight at the beginning of the podcast. But I think we're going to get a bit of a slugfest early. Hopefully Salvador doesn't put the pressure on too quickly. And then we can sneak this into the second round where he can truly let go with the strikes and not worry too much about what's coming back, because Lacerda will be very compromised by that point in time, knowing that his cardio falls off at that 4 to 5 minute mark. Hopefully Salvador can jump on him in round 2 and get him out of there. Cody, take it over, my friend.
Well, I agree with all your plays. I'm hoping they all come through, and then I'm hoping mine come through as well. Jairzinho Rozenstruik by knockout, -115. Again, when you look at Daukaus, him and his brother kind of deal with some durability issues. 5 pro losses, 4 of them by knockout, the vast majority of them fairly early. And with Jairzinho Rozenstruik, how he loses is he doesn't throw enough. This is one of those spots where he won't have to throw enough. He'll just have to land at some point, which he will get that knockout -115. I don't love that that line is played towards he's going to knock him out. It's -115. It's not great. I think it's got a probable likelihood of coming through. So sign me up. Moving on, got to get some plus money in here. We're going to go Ponzinibbio by decision at +185. I like this fight a lot more. I think it's more competitive than the Robbie Lawler fight would have been. Morono's on short notice. That makes me a little bit worried just because I'm going to need him to have 15 minutes of cardio and durability to go out there. But this is going to be high volume on both sides. slightly better shots coming from Ponzinibbio. Both guys landing, maybe Ponzinibbio 100, Morono, neighborhood of 85. High volume, but nobody really sitting on those damaging blows. I think it's going to go 15. If Morono springs the upset, I can see a Morono by decision. But I think it's Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio's been screwed on splits in his last two. Michel Pereira, pretty badass, right? Jeff Neal, pretty badass. Morono, no disrespect to him. The split has got to go our way this time. And hopefully it's not split at all. I'll take a unanimous, okay? Give me the decision, plus 185, Santiago Ponzinibbio. And then we got to go big here. We're going to go with the knockout. Darren Till via knockout, plus 400. Again, I know it's not like the most popular play this week because there's a lot of love coming for the Dricus du Plessis side. I like Dricus du Plessis. He's an all-action guy. The problem with being an all-action guy is sometimes you'll put yourself in bad positions to, hear the roar of the crowd. Dricus is that. He feeds off the energy. He'll go in there with Darren Till thinking he's a broken man and try to put him away. And he might. But I feel like Darren Till, that should play into his hand. He should land that one big left hand down the pipe, intercept him, put him away. If you want to switch off Darren Till, you don't like Darren Till, that's fine. The other play that I was going to go, it's also plus 400, would have been the Chris Curtis action man by decision at plus 400 and hope that he's just able to out-volume Joaquin Buckley and keep his head about him. So I think that it's not like the greatest parlay card. There's 13 fights, but there's a lot of spots that just make you feel real iffy. There's a lot better spots in LFA, Bellator, maybe use multiple organization parlays. But in terms of the props this week, lots of juicy props to select from. And I think this is 6 good ones right here.
There you guys go. 3 best prop bets from Cody. I do have to agree with him as well in terms of the parlays this week may end up getting ripped up. Last week, I think there was a stretch where they had 6 straight underdogs end up hitting. I'm sure everybody was ripping up their parlays last week. This might be a similar one as well. So be very cautious with that. Cody, you know the drill. I'll always give you the platform at the end here to say anything you want to do, and then I'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, that's it, man. Just keep him busy. Matchmaking, obviously. We got a big fight coming up January 21st in Lethbridge. So, yeah, man. We've got about 6 UFC veterans on the card, so it looks pretty good. And then we've got the right to do a full bare-knuckle boxing match in March. So then I'll be matching up a bunch of UFC veterans in bare-knuckle boxing fights. So, good times all around. But, yeah, outside of that, honestly, I say it every week, but I appreciate the guys taking their time, jumping in. The comment section, like what you'll notice is it's always the same guys, and that means the most to me. Seeing my boy Clint jump in too, just some time in his day on a Thursday, jumping by to say what's up. Do appreciate the support as always. And the only way to really thank you guys is to give you some good advice. So hopefully this week some of that advice is good. I feel like the props are fairly okay. And should be all right. So Bellator tomorrow, that's going to be a big one. Obviously, my boy Manpreet's got you covered on the LFA side of things, so check out his channel, and I will definitely tweet some plays out and hopefully make this a fun and exciting weekend because right before Christmas, that's the best time to hit, right?
Absolutely. I feel like you dropped a gem there that I quickly want to rewind and just quickly get just a brief thing on it. BKFC up here in Canada, is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah. So BKFC wants to expand out. So they've done the US, they've done Thailand, they've done the UK. So now they said they want to go to like 6 new countries in 2023. I would imagine South America on one of these. They're probably going to be looking to go to Mexico. They'd be probably looking to go to a France and Ireland, something like that. But they want to come to Canada. So the thing with Canada is, well, we're going to Canada. Well, Canada is the second biggest landmark, and there's no fucking buddy that lives here. Right? So, like, where would you go in Canada? Well, people are gravitated towards Toronto. Want to go towards Toronto. Ontario's never going to let you do bare knuckle boxing. Not going to happen. So now you got to move outside of that. The only place in Canada right now that lets you do bare knuckle boxing is Lethbridge, Alberta, and Medicine Hat, Alberta. So yeah, that's of course, bro. What the fuck? So that's where we're operating out of. But I hear that BKFC's in talks with Quebec. They're trying to either do Native Reserve in Quebec, or they're just trying to get Quebec to amend it. But they're going to try to get in through that way. So BKFC definitely trying to come to Canada. It looks like they will probably do so in 2023. But I know that they outsource a lot of their matchmaking. So what I'd like to do is put on this full pull out a full bare knuckle boxing event prior. Then they come here. They need a hand. They need someone that knows the lay of the land. They want to know contracts, they want to know any of that stuff, then maybe I would be the go-to guy to gravitate towards. But I will say one thing about Lethbridge and Medicine Hat and all that. I lived in Toronto as a single man for like 7 years, right? That's the city. That's the action. That is the big smoke. You pull out a Tinder, right? You can't get a fucking match to save your life. You go to buttfuck Thunder Bay, bro, and you are just cleaning up. Now, why is that? Population is like 1/17 of Toronto, right? Why is that? Yeah, there's nothing really going on. So people are more down to play, right? Yeah, that's how it is in the fight game. Shows in Toronto don't sell. You go to Hamilton, you go to Windsor, you go to Oshawa, you go to the blue collar places. Yeah, and that's what people are like, there's nothing going on. I'm down to see people get punched in the face. So my kind of people out in them parts of the world. But yeah, I think BKFC's taken over. Like they got a lot of money and they just signed a deal with this new promotion that's not promotion, but a new sponsor that's just basically feeding them capital. They want to make a play on Nate Diaz for $500,000 a fight. They want to sign basically any guy coming out of the UFC, Bellator, any pro boxer. Like they've got money. And guys like Chris Camozzi, man, they gave him $30K flat just to fight in his own backyard. Like the one guy of a card of 25 guys. Like they got the dough. So the tough part here is like, a high-end martial artist on the regional scenes looking at a 4-4, or maybe a 5-5, 10 grand to win a fight. Whereas like BKFC's like, you want to fight with no gloves on to make 30,000, 3 times the money. And a lot of the guys, trust me, bro, a lot of the guys are like, fuck, man, bare knuckle. I don't really want to do that. And it's like 5 2-minute rounds. It's like 10 minutes of work, 10 minutes of work. Sign me up. What's up? And I can fight some guy that was 2-11 as an MMA fighter, but is undefeated 0-0 in bare knuckle boxing. Oh, bro, they love that shit. So I'm all down for fighters getting paid, making money, having avenues to do stuff outside of, when their career kind of ends up in the spotlight. So my boy Luis Palomino, one of my favorite fighters all time, right? Never been in a bad fight. One of the most action fighters all time. His career's done in MMA. He's done. He's effectively irrelevant. I think he's won like 9 straight bare knuckle boxing fights.
Yeah,
he's
killing
like a 2-weight world champion. Yeah. And the baboon is still the man. He's an unbelievable savage, but take the gloves off. It's like guys could sometimes take the punch against him in MMA. Without the gloves, they cannot.
There you go. I see my guy Mushroom asking for some Bellator main card props. Unfortunately, I got to run. I got another stream and obligations that I got to get to, but I know Cody would happily be dropping some Bellator props on his Twitter or anything like that. Keep an eye on his Twitter page tomorrow. I'm sure he'll be dropping his PRP and not to mention maybe some other plays for you guys to tell. So I apologize, Mushroom. I know you're one of the main supporters. I love you, but I got to get going. Cody, I love you as always. Love doing the show with you on a weekly basis. 3 big cards for us this weekend to bet on. Hopefully we can come out with some cash and then parlay into the UFC Vegas 66 card, I believe, which is going down next week, which closes off the UFC schedule for the year. We appreciate everybody for checking out the show. On the way out, make sure you guys drop a like and subscribe. Drop a comment below as well. And we will see you guys right back here next week for that Jared Cannonier versus Sean Strickland card. Good luck this weekend. See you guys next week. Peace.